The Paradise Cove Inn had been in my family for 3 generations. It wasn't the largest or most luxurious hotel on Crystal Bay Beach, but it had something money couldn't buy: heart. Every weathered floorboard, every salt-kissed window, and every worn cushion in the lobby told a story of family vacations, honeymoon couples, and summer memories that spanned decades. My name is Lila Chen, and this hotel is more than just my inheritance. It's my legacy. My grandparents built the inn in 1962. They were immigrants who arrived with nothing but dreams and determination. They started with just 10 rooms and a small restaurant serving Grandma's famous coconut pancakes to sleepy fishermen at dawn. My parents expanded it to 30 rooms in the 90s, adding a second floor and the Wave Watcher's deck, which became famous for marriage proposals. I grew up in room 12, doing homework at the front desk and learning hospitality from the ground up. Every guest is family, Dad always said. When Dad passed away last year, Mom and I kept the hotel running, just the two of us. It wasn't easy. Big chains were moving in, offering standardized luxury and corporate efficiency. But we had our loyal guests, families who'd been coming back for generations, who knew that true hospitality couldn't be franchised. Then I met Ethan Carter at a local business association meeting. He was charming, passionate about sustainable tourism, and seemed to understand the value of family-owned businesses. We fell in love over long walks on the beach and discussions about preserving the character of Crystal Bay. I should have known it was too good to be true. The Carters, as I soon learned, were hotel royalty. Carter Resorts, their international luxury chain, was worth billions. Ethan's parents, Gregory and Eleanor Carter, didn't just own hotels. They devoured them, buying up prime beachfront properties and transforming them into identical glass and steel monuments to excess. Our wedding was a society event at their flagship resort in Bali. I wore a designer dress that cost more than our hotel's annual maintenance budget, feeling like an actress in a play where I didn't know my lines. "Welcome to the family," Eleanor had said, air kissing my cheeks. "We'll have to do something about your background, of course. Perhaps a position in our PR department." I smiled politely and kept the Paradise Cove's ledger hidden in my desk drawer. The first year of marriage was a delicate balance. Ethan split his time between working for his family's company and helping me modernize our hotel systems. He seemed to respect my dedication to preserving Paradise Cove's character, even as his parents made thinly veiled suggestions about upgrading to our standards. Then came the family dinner that changed everything. The Carters had invited us to their penthouse overlooking the bay. Mom was working the front desk as usual, so it was just Ethan and me. Eleanor had arranged the dining room like a corporate boardroom, complete with presentation materials at each place setting. "We have exciting news," Gregory announced as servers poured $100 a bottle wine. "Carter Resorts is expanding into Crystal Bay." My heart stopped. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table but wouldn't meet my eyes. "We're building our most ambitious property yet," Eleanor continued, sliding glossy renderings across the table. "The Crystal Bay Carter minus 40 stories, 500 rooms, restaurants, and a rooftop infinity pool. It will redefine luxury in this market." The proposed location was right next to Paradise Cove. The massive tower would completely overshadow our modest property. Of course, Gregory added with a predatory smile, "We'll need to acquire some adjacent properties to maximize the footprint." "The Paradise Cove Inn isn't for sale," I said quietly. Eleanor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Darling, let's be realistic. That dying property is hardly worth maintaining. We're prepared to offer you a very generous price. Say, twice its current market value." "It's not about money," I started, but she cut me off. "Everything is about money, dear. That's your problem. You're too sentimental. Business requires a certain ruthlessness." "Mother," Ethan interjected, "Lila has put her heart in tow." "And that's precisely why she can't see clearly," Gregory interrupted. "The property value alone. Once our resort opens, will force her to sell. We're offering a courtesy here, a chance to exit gracefully." I looked at Ethan, hoping for support, but he was studying his wine glass intently. "Think about it," Eleanor pressed. "You can have a real career with Carter Resorts. Leave that quaint little motel behind and step into the future." My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "No, thank you." "Don't be foolish," Eleanor snapped, her facade cracking. That worthless property won't survive 6 months once we break ground. Sell to us now or watch it crumble. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin beside my untouched entree. Thank you for dinner. I should get back. We have guests arriving. As I left, I heard Eleanor say to Ethan, "Really, darling, couldn't you have married someone more ambitious?" The drive home was silent. Ethan kept starting to speak, then stopping. When we pulled into Paradise Cove's parking lot, the sight of our vintage inn sign glowing against the twilight sky brought tears to my eyes. "Lila," Ethan finally said, "maybe they have a point. The market is changing. Paradise Cove would need massive investments to compete with another soulless luxury tower." I turned to face him. "Is that really what Crystal Bay needs?" "I'm trying to help," he protested. "If you just consider." "Did you know?" I asked quietly, "about their plans?" His silence was answer enough. "How long?" "For months," he admitted. "The permits are already in process." "Lila, please try to understand. This is business." I got out of the car, my heels crunching on the seashell-lined path my grandfather had built 60 years ago. "No, Ethan, this is family." Inside, Mom was checking in a young couple who'd just gotten engaged. Their faces glowed with joy as she gave them the key to room 15, the room where the groom's parents had spent their own honeymoon 28 years ago. "Everything okay, honey?" Mom asked as the couple headed upstairs. I hugged her tightly, breathing in her familiar scent of jasmine and fresh laundry. "We need to talk." Over late-night coffee in our private kitchen, I told her everything. The resort plans, the threat, the ultimatum. Mom listened quietly, her hands wrapped around her mug. When I finished, she got up and went to the old filing cabinet in the corner, pulling out a leather folder I'd never seen before. "Your father and I knew this day might come," she said, sitting back down. "The big chains have been circling Crystal Bay for years. That's why we made some preparations." She opened the folder, revealing documents, deeds, and maps that made my eyes widen. "Mom, this is insurance," she smiled. "Your father wasn't just a hotel manager, honey. He was a visionary." As she explained, a plan began to form in my mind. The Carters thought they were dealing with a naive innkeeper's daughter. They were about to learn that sometimes the smallest properties held the biggest surprises. "It won't be easy," Mom warned. The Carters played dirty. I thought of Eleanor's sneering face, of Ethan's weakness, of the legacy my grandparents had built from nothing. "Then it's a good thing we know how to clean up messes," I replied, thinking of all the spills and stains we tackled over the years. That night, I sat on the wave watcher's deck, listening to the surf and making calls. By dawn, I had the beginnings of a strategy that would either save Paradise Cove or bring down both our properties in the attempt. The Carters had 6 months until their grand opening, 6 months to learn that true hospitality, like true love, couldn't be bought or sold. It was time to show them exactly how much a worthless property could be worth. The next morning, I woke to the sound of construction. Carter's crews were already setting up at the adjacent property, their machines growling like hungry predators. I found Ethan in the hotel lobby, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "Lila, please be reasonable," he began. "Mother and father are willing to increase their offer, 3 times market value." I was checking in the Thompsons, who'd been coming to Paradise Cove every summer for 20 years. Their kids had learned to swim in our pool. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson." I smiled, handing her the familiar key. "The hibiscus you planted last year is blooming beautifully, just like always." She beamed, then frowned at the construction noise. "What's happening next door?" "Progress, apparently," I said dryly. "Don't worry, our pancakes will still be served at sunrise." Ethan waited until they left before continuing. "This is exactly what I mean. Sentimental attachments aren't a business model. The Carter will have automated check-in, digital room controls, AI concierge services, and 0 personal connection." I finished. "Is that really what you want?" He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "What I want is for you to be practical. This resistance is pointless. The permits are approved. Construction has started." "Most of the permits," I corrected, thinking of the documents Mom had shown me. "Tell your parents I'm not selling. Not now. Not ever." As he left, I called the number Mom had given me. "Mr. Wu, this is Lila Chen from Paradise Cove. I believe you knew my father." Over the next week, I met with a series of people who'd known Dad, lawyers, city council members, local business owners. Each meeting revealed another piece of the puzzle he'd left behind. The biggest surprise came from Maria Lopez, the city's water resources manager. "Your father was brilliant," she said, spreading out surveys and water tables. He knew development would come eventually, so he secured the rights to the underground aquifer that supplies this entire section of the beach. I studied the maps with growing amazement. So any major construction would need our permission to access the water supply. She grinned. And that's just the beginning. She was right. Dad had spent years quietly acquiring easements, rights of way, and strategic slivers of land throughout Crystal Bay. None of them were worth much individually, but together, they formed a web of legal control over key infrastructure points. Eleanor started sending increasingly aggressive real estate agents to our door. I had Mom handle them while I put our plan into motion. First, I contacted every small business owner in Crystal Bay who'd been squeezed out by Carter's previous developments. Their stories painted a pattern of broken promises and strong-arm tactics. Then I reached out to environmental groups concerned about the resort's impact on the delicate coastal ecosystem. Dad's research on water tables and erosion patterns proved invaluable, but my masterstroke came from an unexpected source. Our longtime maintenance man, George. "Miss Lila," he said one evening, "he should see what they're doing with their foundation work. My cousins are on their crew." The photos he showed me made my blood run cold. Carter Resorts was cutting corners on critical structural elements, rushing to meet their ambitious opening date. I took the evidence to Amanda Wu, an old family friend and the city's top construction lawyer. "This is serious," she said, reviewing the documentation. "If these modifications aren't properly permitted." "How long to prepare the injunction?" She smiled. "For Robert Chen's daughter, I'll have it ready tomorrow." The next month was a blur of legal maneuvers and countermoves. The Carters threw money and lawyers at every obstacle, but Dad's meticulous groundwork held firm. Eleanor showed up one morning, perfectly manicured rage in every step. "You ungrateful little gold digger," she hissed. "After everything we've done for you. You mean like hiding your development plans during my wedding?" I kept checking in guests, refusing to give her the satisfaction of my full attention, or trying to bully me out of my inheritance. "We made your cheap little motel famous by association. Ethan threw away his reputation by marrying the help, and this is how you repay us." I finally looked up. "First, I'm not the help. I'm a third-generation business owner. Second, Ethan didn't marry down. You just never realize what real class looks like." She left in a fury of designer perfume and threats. That evening, Ethan moved out of our suite. "I'm sorry," he said, packing his limited collection of casual clothes, "but I have to think about my future in the company." I fingered my wedding ring. "And what about our future?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "Maybe after you." I placed the ring on the dresser. "Goodbye, Ethan." Construction continued next door, but every day brought new delays. Water access issues, permit complications, labor disputes. The Carters burned through money trying to solve problems that all led back to one source: the rights and regulations Dad had quietly accumulated over decades. A week before the grand opening, I received an unexpected visitor, Gregory Carter himself, looking less polished than usual. "Name your price," he said without preamble. "This vendetta has gone on long enough." I led him out to the Wave Watcher's deck. The sunset painted the sky in spectacular colors, while next door, his half-finished resort cast long shadows. "Mr. Carter, this isn't a vendetta. This is protection of my family's legacy, of Crystal Bay's character, of the right way to do business." "Don't lecture me about business," he snapped. "Your father." "My father," I interrupted, understood that true success isn't just about profit margins. It's about building something that lasts, something that makes the world a little better. I handed him a folder. "These are my terms, non-negotiable." He read through the documents, his face darkening. "This is blackmail, Lila." "This is partnership," I corrected. "Paradise Cove stays independent but will work with Carter Resorts to develop Crystal Bay responsibly. No more strong-arm tactics. No more destroying small businesses. We grow together, or we both fail." "And if I refuse?" I smiled. "Then the evidence of your permit violations goes public tomorrow, and the aquifer access remains blocked. Your choice." The grand opening was postponed by mutual agreement. When the Crystal Bay Carter finally opened 6 months later, it was 20 stories shorter, with local businesses operating in its retail spaces and a design that complemented rather than overwhelmed its neighbors. Paradise Cove got an update, subtle modernizations that preserved its character while improving efficiency. We still serve Grandma's coconut pancakes at sunrise. Ethan sent divorce papers from Dubai, where he's running a regional office. I signed them without regret. Some loves, like some business models, aren't built to last. Eleanor still won't speak to me, but Gregory and I have developed a grudging respect. Last week, he brought potential investors to dinner at our restaurant. Sometimes, I overheard him say, the best business decisions aren't the obvious ones. Mom and I added a new tradition. Once a month, we invite local hotel owners for a strategy session on maintaining Crystal Bay's unique character while adapting to changing times. The meetings always end with sunset cocktails on the Wave Watchers deck. Yesterday, a young couple checked in for their honeymoon. We chose Paradise Cove because it has something special, the bride said. You can feel the history, the heart. I gave them the key to room 15 and watched them head upstairs, hand in hand. Through the lobby windows, I could see both our Vintage Inn sign and Carter's elegant modern logo glowing against the twilight sky. Different styles, different approaches, but finally in balance. Dad would have loved that. Later, standing on the beach where my grandparents first dreamed of building something lasting, I thought about legacy, not just the physical property, but the principles it represented. Integrity, perseverance, the courage to stand up for what's right. The waves still whisper against the shore, telling stories of past and future. Paradise Cove Inn still welcomes travelers looking for more than just a place to sleep. And I still believe, like my family before me, that true hospitality comes from the heart. Some things, after all, really are worthless to those who only see dollar signs. But to those who understand value beyond a balance sheet, they're absolutely priceless.
The day my siblings mocked me for being Uncle Marcus's servant was the same day I learned I'd inherited his entire fortune. Funny how life works sometimes. My name is Alice, and for the past 3 years, I've been taking care of my uncle while working remotely as a content writer. Not exactly the glamorous life my siblings chose, but it was honest work that let me help someone I loved. Look who finally made it to a family dinner, Celeste announced as I walked into her newly renovated kitchen. Did Uncle Marcus give you the night off? I forced a smile, setting down the casserole I'd brought. He insisted I come. He's doing better today. Vincenzo, sprawled on the leather couch with his usual glass of whiskey, snorted. Better? The man's got one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. You're wasting your life, sis. Unlike you, I muttered under my breath, but nobody heard me over Giselle's theatrical entrance. Oh my God, Alice. She air-kissed both my cheeks. That outfit is so practical. Still shopping at Target? I smoothed down my simple black dress, fighting back the urge to remind her about the maxed-out credit cards our parents had to pay off for her last year. Stephen, my boyfriend, squeezed my hand under the table during dinner. He'd been my rock through all of this, understanding why I chose to help Uncle Marcus when everyone else had written him off as a bitter old man. I just don't get it, Giselle said, twirling her wineglass. You could be traveling the world, meeting people, living life. Instead, you're changing adult diapers and watching Wheel of Fortune reruns. He doesn't wear... I started to protest, but Celeste cut me off. At least she's got job security until he kicks the bucket. She laughed. Though I doubt he's leaving you anything in the will, Alice. He's probably donating it all to his cat sanctuary or whatever. My phone buzzed. Uncle Marcus's nurse. I excused myself to take the call, ignoring the dramatic sighs from my siblings. Alice? Rachel's voice was gentle but urgent. You need to come to the house. Now. The drive was a blur. I arrived to find Rachel, our family lawyer, waiting on the porch with red-rimmed eyes. He went peacefully, she said, hugging me. He was asking for you. The next 48 hours passed in a haze of funeral arrangements and paperwork. My siblings showed up for the service, of course. Celeste even managed to squeeze out a few tears for the cameras. Uncle Marcus had been a prominent figure in local business, and the turnout was impressive. If everyone's ready, Rachel said after the reception, Marcus left specific instructions about the will reading. We gathered in his study, the room where I'd spent countless hours reading to him, listening to his stories, learning about his life. My siblings lounged on the leather furniture, probably already mentally spending whatever small inheritance they expected. Rachel cleared her throat. Marcus Walton, being of sound mind, hereby leaves his entire estate, including all properties, businesses, and financial assets, to his niece, Alice Parker. The silence was deafening. What? Vincenzo stood up so fast he knocked over a side table. That's impossible. There must be some mistake. Celeste's voice shook. We're his family too. The will is quite clear, Rachel continued. Alice receives everything, valued at approximately $47 million. I heard Giselle's champagne glass shatter on the hardwood floor. Furthermore, Rachel added, Marcus left a letter explaining his decision. She handed me an envelope with trembling fingers. My dearest Alice, they'll call it favoritism. They'll say you manipulated me. But we both know the truth. You saw me as a person, not a bank account. You listened when no one else would. You gave me back my dignity when illness tried to take it away. I'm trusting you with my legacy because you understand what really matters. Don't let them pressure you into sharing just because they're family. Make them earn it, like you did. Show them there's more to life than money. All my love, Uncle Marcus. I looked up from the letter to find my siblings staring at me with a mixture of shock, anger, and, finally, respect. So, Vincenzo said, his voice suddenly honey-sweet, I guess we should talk about family taking care of family, right? I folded the letter carefully and put it in my purse. You're right, Vincenzo. We should definitely talk about family. I stood up, straightening my practical target dress, but not today. I think we all need some time to process this. As I walked out of the study, I heard Giselle burst into tears. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to comfort her. Uncle Marcus had given me more than money. He'd given me the power to reshape our family's future, and I intended to use it. The call started exactly 3 days after the will reading. I was in Uncle Marcus's study. My study now, sorting through decades of paperwork when my phone lit up with Celeste's name. Alice, sweetie. Her voice dripped with artificial sweetness. I've been thinking about you. How are you holding up? I set down a stack of old photographs. I'm fine, Celeste. Just busy. Of course. Listen, I hate to bring this up, but... She paused dramatically. My therapist thinks I'm having a breakthrough, but I might have to stop sessions. The bills are just... That's terrible, I said, remembering all the times she'd mocked my wasteful therapy sessions years ago. Have you considered getting a job? The silence on the other end was delicious. Job? She sounded like I'd suggested she swim with sharks. Alice, you know my condition. Sorry, someone's at the door. We'll talk later. I hung up, only to have Vincenzo's name pop up immediately. Little sis. His voice was suspiciously clear. None of the usual slurring. Remember that business idea I told you about last Christmas? The cryptocurrency casino? No, the other one. The legitimate one. About helping people? I couldn't remember any such conversation. Must have slipped my mind. Well, I've got it all planned out. Just need some startup capital. Say $2 million. I'll pay you back with interest. Stephen walked in with 2 cups of coffee, raising an eyebrow at my expression. I put the phone on speaker. Vincenzo, remember last year when you said I was throwing my life away by helping Uncle Marcus? I was in a bad place then. He backpedaled. I've changed. Speaking of change, I found this amazing rehab facility. Goodbye, Vincenzo. Stephen handed me my coffee. That's the 3rd call today? 4th. Giselle texted about her life-changing fashion line idea. I showed him the message, complete with crying emojis and promises of making me proud. What are you going to do? He sat down across from me, genuine concern in his eyes. I don't know yet, but Uncle Marcus's letter said to make them earn it. I picked up another photograph. Uncle Marcus at a charity gala, beaming beside a group of caregivers. He was always more than his money. They never saw that. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Rachel. Alice, can you come to my office tomorrow? There's something about the estate you need to see. Is everything okay? Yes, but... She hesitated. Your uncle left some specific instructions, and I think you'll want to hear them in person. After hanging up, I spent the next hour going through more papers. Hidden between tax documents and business reports, I found photographs of my siblings with Uncle Marcus from years ago. Celeste helping him garden, Vincenzo learning to play chess, Giselle showing him her first fashion sketches. They used to care before money and status became their only goals. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I opened it to find Giselle on my doorstep, mascara streaked down her face. My landlord's evicting me, she sobbed, pushing past me into the foyer. I need help, Alice. Please. Like how you helped me when I asked to borrow money for Uncle Marcus's medication last year? She flinched. That was different. I didn't have it then. But you have more than enough now. You're right. I crossed my arms. I do have enough. Enough to help people who actually deserve it. I'm your sister, and I was your sister when you told everyone I was Uncle Marcus's gold-digging nurse. She stepped back, shock replacing the tears. You heard about that. I heard everything, Giselle. Every joke, every snide comment, every time you all laughed at me for caring about him. I opened the door wider. Come back when you want to be a real sister, not just a professional victim. After she left, Stephen found me in the study again, staring at the old photos. You okay? They weren't always like this, I said softly. Something changed them. Maybe the money can change them back. What do you mean? I picked up Uncle Marcus's letter again, focusing on one particular line. Make them earn it, like you did. I think I know what I want to do, I said slowly. But first, I need to talk to Rachel tomorrow. Uncle Marcus always had a plan. I have a feeling he left me more than just money. Stephen smiled, understanding in his eyes. You're not planning to just give them what they want, are you? No, I said, looking at the photo of Uncle Marcus at the charity gala. I'm planning to give them what they need, whether they like it or not. I set my alarm for the meeting with Rachel, already forming ideas in my mind. Uncle Marcus taught me that true wealth isn't about having money. It's about what you do with it. Tomorrow, I'd start putting that lesson to work. Rachel's office felt smaller than I remembered, probably because of the stacks of documents covering every surface. She gestured for me to sit while pulling out a thick manila envelope. Before we start, she said, I need to show you something. She slid a photograph across the desk. Do you recognize her? The photo showed a young woman, maybe my age, with Uncle Marcus's distinctive green eyes. My heart skipped a beat. That's Palmer, isn't it? His daughter? Rachel nodded. The one who disappeared 10 years ago. Marcus never stopped looking for her. He never talked about her. I picked up the photo, studying the familiar features. I knew she existed, but because it hurt too much. Rachel opened the manila envelope. What I'm about to show you isn't just a will, Alice. It's a blueprint. She spread out several documents, property deeds, business plans, and what looked like preliminary paperwork for a foundation. The Marcus Walton Foundation for Family Caregivers, I read aloud. He started planning this years ago, Rachel explained, but he needed someone who understood his vision. That's why he chose you. But why didn't he tell me? Because he wanted to see what you'd do with complete freedom. She pulled out another document. This is his personal journal. Read this entry. I recognized Uncle Marcus's shaky handwriting. Alice brings me tea every morning, not because she has to, but because she knows I like watching the sunrise. My other nieces and nephews see my money. Alice sees me. She'll know what to do with this foundation. She'll understand it's not about charity. It's about transformation. He knew, I whispered. He knew I'd want to help them, not just give them money. Keep reading. The foundation must support caregivers, but it needs to create them too. Show people the value of caring for others. Maybe then Palmer will understand why I couldn't give her everything she wanted. Maybe then she'll come home. There's more, Rachel said, pulling out another folder. He left detailed plans for different programs, support groups for families dealing with addiction, mental health resources, career development for caregivers, everything you'd need to help people like my siblings, I finished, but also like Palmer. Rachel's expression softened. He never gave up hope that she'd return. The foundation was his way of building a bridge back to her. Do you know where she is? Last we heard, she was in Seattle, working as a nurse, ironically enough. Rachel handed me a business card. This is her work number. I pocketed the card, my mind racing. What about the rest of the estate? The foundation gets the bulk of it, but you have complete control over how it's used. She smiled. Marcus trusted your judgment. So I could, theoretically, create positions within the foundation? Specific roles for specific people? Absolutely. As long as they're qualified or willing to become qualified. I thought about Celeste's therapy struggles, Vincenzo's addiction, Giselle's need for purpose. And we could provide training, education. The foundation can fund whatever programs you think will fulfill its mission. Rachel paused. But Alice, be careful. Power can change people, both those who have it and those who want it. My phone buzzed. Another text from Vincenzo about his business idea. I think power already changed them, I said. Maybe it's time to change them back. Rachel handed me a key. This opens Marcus's private safe. There's one more letter in there for you. He said to read it when you're ready to start the foundation. On my way home, I pulled into the parking lot of Uncle Marcus's favorite diner. I used to bring him here on good days when he could still manage short trips. The waitress recognized me. Your usual booth? She asked. Please. I sat where Uncle Marcus always sat, ordering his favorite coffee. I pulled out Palmer's card, then my phone. My finger hovered over the numbers. Need a refill, hun? The waitress appeared with a pot of coffee. No, thanks. Just working up the courage to make a call. She smiled knowingly. Your uncle used to say courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing anyway. I dialed before I could change my mind. 3 rings, then, Seattle General, Palmer speaking. My heart raced. Hi, Palmer. You don't know me, but I'm Alice, your father's niece. Silence. If you're calling about the will, I don't want anything. I'm calling about his foundation, the one he was building for you. Another pause. What foundation? Can we meet? There's so much you need to know. About him, about why he did what he did, about how much he loved you. I heard her take a shaky breath. I'm off next weekend. I'll fly you here. First class. No strings attached. Just come see what he built, what we could build together. After hanging up, I looked at Uncle Marcus's empty seat across from me. I hope I'm doing this right, I whispered. The foundation would be my revenge, but not the kind my siblings would expect. Uncle Marcus taught me that the best revenge isn't about destroying people, it's about rebuilding them. The week before Palmer's visit, Celeste showed up unannounced at my door. Her eyes were red, hands trembling as she clutched her designer purse. I need to talk to you, she said, pushing past me into the house. And I need you to just listen. I led her to the kitchen where she collapsed onto a bar stool. Want some tea? She shook her head. I stopped taking my meds. The kettle I was filling clattered against the sink. What? Why? Couldn't afford them, or the therapy. She laughed bitterly. Funny how fast savings disappear when you haven't worked in 3 years. I set 2 mugs down anyway, dropping tea bags into both. Why are you telling me this? Because... She took a shaky breath. Because you were right, about getting a job, about everything. But I can't do it alone anymore. And you want money? No. She grabbed my hand. Well, yes, but not like that. I want help. Real help, like how you helped Uncle Marcus. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. My sister, scared and vulnerable. What about your husband? I asked. Can't he help? We're separated, have been for 2 months. She stared into her untouched tea. Turns out day drinking and maxing out credit cards isn't attractive to successful lawyers. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Palmer. Flight landed, heading to hotel. Still on for dinner? Celeste, I said slowly. What if I told you I'm starting a foundation? One that helps people like you? She looked up. What kind of help? Therapy, job training, support groups. But it's not a handout. You'd have to work for it. Work how? Eventually, you'd help others who struggle with mental health. Share your experience. But first, you'd need to focus on getting better. She was quiet for a long moment. Why are you doing this? Because Uncle Marcus taught me something. Sometimes people need a hand up, not a handout. And you'd trust me? After everything? I pulled out my laptop, opening the foundation's draft proposal. Read this. It's what Uncle Marcus wanted. What I want, but only if you're serious. She started reading, tears falling onto the keyboard. This is real, isn't it? As real as you want it to be. I handed her a tissue, but you have to commit. No more games. When can I start? First, you need to get back on your meds. I'll cover them temporarily through the foundation. Then we'll work on the rest. She hugged me suddenly, something she hadn't done since we were kids. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything. After Celeste left, I headed to the restaurant where I was meeting Palmer. She was already there, looking so much like Uncle Marcus it hurt. I almost didn't come, she said as I sat down. I'm glad you did. Why did you really call me? Her green eyes, his eyes, fixed on mine. I pulled out Uncle Marcus's journal. Because he wrote about you every day. She flinched. I don't want to hear about. He was building this foundation for you, I interrupted. Not just for you to inherit, but for you to understand. Understand what? That money was more important than his daughter? That helping others was more important than enabling them? I opened the journal to a marked page. Read it. She took it reluctantly. Palmer wants me to fund another business venture. Says this one will work. But I've watched her start and fail 3 times, burning through money without learning. She thinks I'm punishing her. I'm trying to save her. Sometimes love means saying no. Palmer's hands shook. He wrote this? There's more. About how proud he was when you became a nurse. How he kept every article about your volunteer work in Seattle. He knew about that? I nodded. He never stopped watching over you. Never stopped loving you. She wiped her eyes. It's too late now. No, it's not. I slid the foundation proposal across the table. Help me build this. Help me do what he wanted. Teach people the value of caring for others. Why me? Because you already understand it. You're a nurse. You help people every day. That's exactly what he wanted for you. She started reading, her expression changing from skepticism to interest. This could actually work. It already is. My sister Celeste just agreed to be our first participant. Palmer looked up. The foundation helps families? It helps anyone who needs to learn what you and I already know, that true worth isn't in a bank account. It's in what we give back. She was quiet for a long time, flipping through the proposal. Finally, she said, I have vacation time saved up. Maybe I could help set up the mental health programs. I smiled, feeling Uncle Marcus's presence between us. I think he'd like that. The foundation's office space was still under renovation when Vincenzo stumbled in, reeking of alcohol at 10 in the morning. Heard about Celeste's sweet deal. He slurred, dropping into a chair across from my desk. Where's mine? Palmer, who was arranging files nearby, shot me a concerned look. I nodded slightly, and she quietly left the room. There is no deal. Vincenzo, Celeste agreed to get help. That's what I want. Help. He spread his arms wide, nearly knocking over my coffee. I'm ready to change, baby sis. Just need some startup capital. The foundation doesn't give out cash. I pulled out a brochure for New Horizons Recovery Center. But we can offer you this. He squinted at it. Rehab? I don't need rehab. I need to stop drinking yourself to death? I stood up, walking to the window. When was the last time you were sober for more than a day? I can quit anytime. Prove it. He laughed. You think you're so smart now with your fancy foundation, acting all high and mighty. Remember when you taught me to ride a bike? I turned to face him. You were 16, patient, kind. What happened to that brother? His face crumpled for a moment before he caught himself. Life happened. No. Choices happened. I sat next to him. The foundation will pay for everything. Rehab, therapy, job training. But you have to commit. And if I don't, then this is the last time we talk until you're sober. He stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. You can't cut me off. I'm family. Family helps each other get better, not worse. I handed him my card. Call me when you're ready, really ready. After he stormed out, Palmer came back in. That was intense. That was actually one of our better conversations. I righted his chair. He'll be back. How can you be sure? Because I saw his hands shaking. He's scared, and for the first time, he has nowhere else to turn. My phone buzzed. Giselle. Again. I let it go to voicemail. Your sister? Palmer asked. The last holdout. She's still convinced she can charm her way into the money. As if on cue, Giselle burst through the door, designer sunglasses perched on her head. Alice, we need to... She stopped short, seeing Palmer. Who's this? Palmer, Uncle Marcus's daughter. Giselle's mouth fell open. The prodigal cousin returns. How much did she have to grovel to get a piece of the pie? Actually, Palmer said coolly, I'm here to help run the Foundation's medical programs. I'm a nurse. A nurse? Giselle laughed. With your inheritance, you could... I didn't get an inheritance, Palmer interrupted, and I don't want one. Unlike some people, I understand the value of earning my own way. Giselle's face reddened. Well, aren't you just perfect? Tell me, where were you when your father was dying? Giselle, I snapped, that's enough. Why are you here? Why? She composed herself, switching to her sweet voice. I've been thinking about your foundation idea. It's inspiring. Maybe I could help? I have excellent taste. I could decorate the offices. We need people committed to the mission, not the aesthetics. Fine. Her mask slipped. How long are you going to punish us? We get it. You won Uncle Marcus's twisted game. You won. This isn't a game. I pulled out the Foundation's mission statement. This is about helping people who want to change, really change. Like Celeste? Please, she's just playing along to get her piece. Actually, Palmer said, Celeste started therapy last week. She's doing the work. And Vincenzo was just here, I added. He's struggling, but at least he showed up. So that's it? Giselle's voice cracked. I have to hit rock bottom to get your help? No, you just have to be honest. With yourself most of all. She sank into the chair Vincenzo had knocked over. I lost my apartment. I know. I'm sleeping on my friend's couch. I know that too. I don't... She took a shaky breath. I don't know how to do anything real. Palmer and I exchanged looks. That's not true, I said. You used to make clothes, beautiful ones, before you got caught up in the influencer life. That was just a hobby. It could be more. I opened my laptop, showing her the Foundation's vocational training programs. We're partnering with the design school downtown. They need teaching assistants for their fashion program. Teaching? She looked uncertain. I've never... You'd start as an assistant, Palmer explained. Learn the ropes. Maybe take some classes yourself. But first, I added, you need to complete the Foundation's basic program, including financial management classes. Giselle stared at the screen for a long moment. Would I have to move back home? The Foundation has temporary housing for participants. I watched her face carefully. But you'd have to follow the rules. No parties, no social media, just focus on learning. She touched the screen gently. Can I think about it? Of course. I handed her the same card I'd given Vincenzo. Take your time. But remember, this offer is about building a future, not funding one. After she left, Palmer smiled. You're good at this. I learned from the best. I picked up Uncle Marcus's photo from my desk. He always said everyone deserves a chance to rewrite their story. Even the ones who hurt you? Especially them. I looked at the door where both my siblings had walked out, because sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who need help the most. The call came at 3 a.m. Vincenzo had been found unconscious in his car outside a bar. I rushed to the hospital, finding him hooked up to monitors, his skin a sickly gray. Are you family? A tired-looking nurse asked. I'm his sister. I gripped the rail of his bed. How bad is it? Bad enough to be a wake-up call, good enough to be a second chance. Palmer arrived shortly after, still in her scrubs from her shift at the local clinic. She checked his charts with professional efficiency. Alcohol poisoning, she confirmed. He's lucky someone found him. Ms. Parker? A doctor entered the room. Your brother's been asking for you. Vincenzo's eyes fluttered open as I approached. Hey, baby sis, he croaked. Guess I really screwed up this time. You could have died. Maybe that would have been easier. He tried to smile but winced instead. Can't mess up if you're dead, right? Don't. My voice cracked. Don't you dare joke about this. The doctor says I need rehab. He looked away. For real this time. The offer still stands. The Foundation will cover everything. I saw Celeste yesterday, he said quietly, at the Foundation. She looked better, different. She's doing the work. 3 weeks sober, back on her meds, attending therapy. And Giselle? Started her training program last week. She's actually showing up on time. He was quiet for a long moment. I always thought I was the strong one, you know? Big brother taking care of everyone. Now look at me. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up. Uncle Marcus used to say that. He grabbed my hand suddenly. I'm scared, Alice. Good. That means you're finally taking this seriously. Palmer stepped in. The rehab center has a bed available, but you need to decide now. He looked between us. Will you visit? Every week, I promised. But you have to stick with it. No more games. Okay. He squeezed my hand. Okay. 3 weeks later, I sat in my office reviewing applications for the Foundation's new caregiver training program. Celeste knocked on the door, looking professional in her new role as a peer support coordinator. The group therapy session went well, she reported. 2 new members today. How are you handling it? It's healing, actually. Helping others deal with what I've been through. She sat down. Have you heard from Vincenzo? He's earned his first chip, taking it day by day. And Giselle? I smiled. See for yourself. We walked to the Foundation's workshop space where Giselle was teaching a group of women basic sewing skills. She looked up and waved, genuine enthusiasm in her eyes. They're making care packages, she explained during her break. Comfort blankets for hospital patients, my idea. It's a good one, I said, meaning it. I forgot how much I loved actually creating things. She touched a half-finished blanket, not just posting about them. Palmer joined us, carrying a stack of files. The medical program starts next month. We've got 20 applicants already. Uncle Marcus would be proud, Celeste said softly, of all of this. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Found something in Marcus's old files. Need to see you ASAP? I have to go, I told them. Keep up the good work. At Rachel's office, she handed me a sealed envelope. This was in a hidden compartment in his desk, dated 2 days before he died. Inside was a single photograph and a note. The photo showed all of us, me, my siblings, and Palmer, at a family picnic years ago. We were laughing, genuine happiness on our faces. The note read, Alice, if you're reading this, the Foundation is working. You've given them something better than money. You've given them purpose. But there's one last secret. Check the safe behind my office painting. The combination is Palmer's birthday. Love, Uncle Marcus. What do you think it is? Rachel asked. Only one way to find out. Back at the house, I moved the painting and found the safe. Inside was another envelope, thicker than the first. My hands shook as I opened it. Letters. Dozens of them. Each one written by Uncle Marcus to Palmer over the years, never sent. And with them, a final note to me. The Foundation isn't just about helping strangers. It's about healing our family. Share these when you think they're ready, when the lessons have been learned, when the healing has begun. I sat on his office floor, surrounded by 10 years of unsent love and wisdom, and called Palmer. Can you gather everyone? I asked. There's something you all need to see. Even Vincenzo? I'll clear it with the rehab center. This is important. As I hung up, I looked at the photo again. We were broken now, but we were healing. Uncle Marcus knew that sometimes the greatest act of love is believing in someone's potential to change, even when they don't believe it themselves. Tomorrow we'd read his letters together. Tomorrow we'd take another step toward becoming the family in that old photograph. Tomorrow we'd continue building his legacy, not of wealth, but of transformation. We gathered in Uncle Marcus's study the next evening. Vincenzo, on a supervised visit from rehab, sat nervously on the couch. Celeste perched beside him, her therapy journal clutched in her lap. Giselle had come straight from teaching, still wearing her workshop apron. Palmer stood by the window, arms crossed, trying to look detached. Before I show you these, I said, holding the bundle of letters, you need to understand something. Uncle Marcus wrote these over 10 years, never intending to send them. Why not? Palmer's voice was tight. Because sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we're not ready to hear. I handed her the first letter. This one's from the day you left. Palmer's hands trembled as she unfolded it. My dearest daughter, you stormed out today, calling me a heartless bastard for refusing to fund your latest venture. What you don't understand is that every no breaks my heart. But watching you chase empty dreams, watching you run from responsibility, that breaks it more. I don't want to hear this, Palmer interrupted. Keep reading, Celeste urged gently. Please. You have so much potential, Palmer. Not because of my money, but because of your heart. The way you used to volunteer at the shelter. The way you'd help elderly neighbors with their groceries. That's the daughter I'm trying to save. Palmer sank into a chair, tears streaming down her face. I pulled out another letter, dated 3 years later. This one mentions all of you. Found out today that Palmer's enrolled in nursing school. Had to pretend I didn't know when Celeste mentioned it. My brave girl, finally finding her path. Meanwhile, Vincenzo's drinking more, Celeste is spiraling, and Giselle's chasing fame. But Alice sees what I see, the potential in caring for others. He knew? Vincenzo whispered. About my drinking? He knew everything. I spread more letters on the coffee table. About Celeste's first panic attack, about Giselle's maxed credit cards, about Palmer's volunteer work in Seattle. Why didn't he say anything? Giselle picked up a letter addressed to her. Because we weren't ready to listen, Celeste said. Were we? Palmer was reading another letter, her hands shaking harder. This one's from last year. Saw Palmer on the news today. She organized a free clinic for homeless veterans. My daughter, healing others while her own heart remains broken. Alice asks about her sometimes. They're so alike, both seeing the value in what really matters. I thought he was punishing me, Palmer whispered. All this time. He was protecting you, Vincenzo finished. All of us. I pulled out the final letter, dated the day before he died. This one's for everyone. My dear ones. By now Alice has shown you these letters. I hope you're ready to read them. I hope you've learned what she's trying to teach you. That true worth isn't in a bank account or social media followers. It's in the lives we touch, the hearts we heal. Palmer, my brave nurse, you found your calling despite my cruelty. Vincenzo, you have the strength to overcome your demons. Celeste, your sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's a gift that can help others heal. Giselle, your creativity shines brightest when it serves a purpose beyond yourself. And Alice, you understood first. That's why I chose you. Not to punish them, but to guide them. To show them what I couldn't. Love isn't always kind. Sometimes it's firm. Sometimes it hurts. But it always believes in the possibility of change. All my love, Dad, Uncle Marcus. The room was silent except for muffled sobs. I've been so angry, Palmer finally said. For so long. We all were. Celeste reached for her hand. At him, at ourselves, at each other. But he never gave up on us, Vincenzo added, even when we gave up on ourselves. Giselle picked up the photo from the picnic. Can we ever be this family again? We already are, I said. Look around. Palmer's helping run the medical programs. Celeste is supporting others through mental health challenges. Vincenzo's facing his addiction. You're teaching people to create with purpose. And you? Palmer asked. What did you get out of all this? I got my family back. I gathered the letters. These belong to all of us now, to remind us where we've been and where we're going. The foundation, Vincenzo started, was his gift to all of us, I finished. Not just the money, but the purpose. The chance to become who we were meant to be. Palmer stood up, walking to Uncle Marcus's desk. She ran her fingers over the worn wood. He'd be proud of us, wouldn't he? He already was, I said, showing them one last note I'd found. They'll find their way back to each other. Alice will show them how. And when they do, they'll understand that this was never about inheritance. It was about legacy, about love, the kind that transforms. We stayed there late into the night, reading letters, sharing memories, healing old wounds. It wasn't perfect. Recovery never is. But it was real. And for the first time in years, we were truly a family again. The autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee and fresh pastries as donors and participants gathered for the Foundation's first anniversary celebration. I watched from the podium as Vincenzo, now 6 months sober, helped elderly participants to their seats. Celeste moved confidently through the crowd, her therapist's badge catching the morning light. Giselle arranged displays of handmade quilts and clothing created by her students. Ready? Palmer appeared beside me, wearing her nurse's uniform. She'd just finished a night shift, but wouldn't miss this. Almost. I adjusted the microphone. Did you see the surprise guest? She smiled. Rachel just texted. They're parking now. The crowd settled as I began my speech. Welcome, everyone. When Uncle Marcus left me his fortune, people thought it was about money. They were wrong. The side door opened, and Rachel walked in with an elderly woman, Marcus's sister, our Aunt Dorothy, who we hadn't seen in years. It was about transformation, I continued, about second chances, about family. Celeste gasped softly, recognizing Aunt Dorothy. Vincenzo straightened his tie nervously. Giselle reached for Palmer's hand. In 1 year, we've helped 53 caregivers receive training. 38 people have completed our addiction recovery program. Our mental health initiative has supported over 100 families. I gestured to the displays around the room. Every quilt, every piece of clothing you see was made by someone learning to create with purpose. Every graduate of our programs has a story of change. Aunt Dorothy was crying quietly in the front row. But the biggest change happened right here. I looked at my siblings. Vincenzo, would you like to share? He stood, hands steady. 6 months ago, I was dying in a hospital bed. Today, I'm helping others find their way to recovery. Uncle Marcus once told me strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up. Celeste spoke next, her voice clear and confident. My anxiety used to feel like a curse. Now I use it to understand others who struggle, to show them they're not alone. My students, Giselle added, touching a nearby quilt, aren't just learning to sew. They're learning what I learned, that true creativity comes from helping others. Palmer stepped forward. I ran away from my father's legacy because I thought it was about money. But standing here, seeing what Alice built, what we all built together, I finally understand. Dad? She looked upward. I get it now. Aunt Dorothy stood shakily. Marcus would be so proud. All those years he worried about you kids. But he knew. She turned to me. He knew you'd bring them home. The foundation isn't just about helping strangers, I said. It's about healing our own wounds so we can heal others. Every person who comes through these doors becomes family. Rachel handed me an envelope. This was in Marcus's final papers. He wanted it opened today. Inside was a single photograph. Uncle Marcus at his desk, surrounded by the letters he'd written, smiling at the camera. On the back was written, "The real inheritance was never in my bank account. It was in their hearts. Alice will understand." And I do understand, I said, showing the photo to the crowd. Every person here is part of his legacy. Every life changed, every heart healed, every family reunited. That's what he wanted us to inherit. The applause was interrupted by Vincenzo's phone buzzing. His face lit up as he read the message. "My sponsee just got his 30-day chip," he announced proudly. Celeste hugged him. "That's your third success story this month." Speaking of success, Giselle added, "The design school wants to expand our program. They're offering scholarships to our graduates." Palmer checked her watch. "I should head home, but..." She looked around at all of us. "Sunday dinner at my place this week? Only if you let me cook," Aunt Dorothy insisted. "These old hands still remember your father's favorite recipes." As the celebration continued, I slipped away to Uncle Marcus's study, my study now, though his presence still filled every corner. The photo wall had grown, showing not just old family pictures, but new ones. Vincenzo with his recovery group, Celeste leading therapy sessions, Giselle teaching, Palmer treating patients. Stephen found me there, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You did it," he whispered. "No," I corrected him. "We did it, all of us." "Still," he smiled, "your revenge turned out pretty sweet." It wasn't revenge in the end. It was resurrection. Through the window, I could see my siblings laughing with Aunt Dorothy, surrounded by the people whose lives they'd helped change. Uncle Marcus was right. The real inheritance wasn't money. It was the chance to become who we were meant to be. I touched the last letter he'd written me, framed on my desk. Sometimes the greatest act of love is believing in someone's potential to change, even when they don't believe it themselves. "Thank you," I whispered to his memory, "for trusting me to bring them home." Outside, Palmer was calling my name. It was time to rejoin my family. Not the broken one I'd inherited, but the stronger one we'd built together. Uncle Marcus's true legacy lived on, not in bank accounts or business holdings, but in every life touched, every heart healed, every soul transformed. That was an inheritance worth more than gold.
The moment Elaine, my mother-in-law, walked into the Thanksgiving dinner, her eyes scanning the room like she owned it, I knew trouble was brewing. "How's your mom doing?" she asked, her voice dripping with a feigned concern that couldn't mask the jealousy lurking beneath. As she eagerly suggested a trip to the mountains, blatantly ignoring the gravity of my mother's illness, I realized that this wasn't just about her wanting time with us. It was a twisted game of one-upmanship where her need for attention clashed with our somber reality. Life before September was a quiet stream, flowing undisturbed. My husband Jake and I had carved out a modest life in our bustling city, far from our hometowns. We were content, or so we thought, until the day my phone rang with news that turned our world upside down. "Mom's sick," my brother's voice trembled on the other end. "It's breast cancer, and it's bad." The words hit me like a physical blow. Mom, the invincible matriarch of our family, the woman who had weathered every storm, was now facing her toughest battle. Metastatic breast cancer. The words echoed in my mind, a relentless reminder of the fragility of life. Jake held me that night, as I cried, his arms a stronghold against the chaos unraveling within me. We knew what we had to do. Within weeks, we arranged to work remotely and packed our lives into suitcases, ready to move across the country to be with Mom. Our plan was met with mixed reactions. My in-laws, particularly my mother-in-law, Elaine, were initially overjoyed at the prospect of us moving back. She lived just an hour and a half from my parents, a proximity that seemed convenient but soon proved to be anything but. "Can't wait to have you both nearby." Elaine's voice chirped over the phone, a stark contrast to the somber mood that had enveloped our lives. I appreciated her enthusiasm, or at least I tried to. But as our departure date neared, her excitement morphed into a relentless expectation for our time and attention. It was as if she couldn't see beyond her own desires, blind to the grim reality we were facing. "We should plan a trip to the mountains," she suggested during one of our calls, her tone oblivious to the weight of our situation. I exchanged a weary look with Jake. How could we explain to her that our move wasn't a joyous reunion, but a somber duty to be with my ailing mother? We arrived at my childhood home in November, welcomed by the familiar sights and scents, now tinged with the underlying scent of medication and antiseptic. Mom, once vibrant and full of life, was a shadow of her former self, the cancer stealing away her strength, but not her spirit. Elaine's calls became more frequent, each one a subtle reminder of her expectations. Thanksgiving was approaching, and she had made it clear she expected us to join her. It was a delicate balance, trying to cater to her needs without neglecting my mother. The Thanksgiving dinner was a surreal experience. Elaine, dressed in her festive best, chatted animatedly, occasionally throwing glances at my mother, who sat quietly, conserving her energy. I could feel the tension in the air by an unspoken battle of needs and desires. "How's your mom doing?" Elaine asked, her voice tinged with a curiosity that felt more invasive than empathetic. "She's fighting," I replied, forcing a smile. "We're just taking it one day at a time." "That's the spirit," Elaine said, but her eyes quickly shifted to Jake. "We should definitely plan that mountain trip soon, for some fresh air." I bit back a retort, the words "not now" sitting heavily on my tongue. This was not the time for leisure plans, not when every moment with my mother was precious. That night, as Jake and I lay in my old bedroom, the weight of our situation settled heavily on us. We were caught in a tug-of-war between duty and obligation, each pull threatening to tear us apart. "Your mom doesn't get it," Jake whispered, his voice heavy with fatigue. "It's like she's living in a different world." I nodded, the reality of our situation sinking in. We were here for my mother, to support her in her fight against an unrelenting enemy. But in doing so, we had inadvertently ignited another battle, one with an adversary we hadn't anticipated, Elaine's jealousy and unmet expectations. The Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house with Elaine present was a balancing act on a tightrope. While Mom rested in her chair, conserving her energy, Elaine's presence filled the room like an overzealous perfume. Her laughter was a bit too loud, her stories a bit too long. Jake and I exchanged knowing glances, each trying to mediate the unspoken tension. Elaine's eyes often darted towards my mother, her gaze a mix of curiosity and something I couldn't quite place. Was it envy? Pity? I couldn't tell. Mom, for her part, offered polite smiles, a testament to her enduring grace even in the face of her illness. The real test came when Elaine suggested a post-dinner walk. "A little stroll will do us good," she announced, her voice tinged with an enthusiasm that felt out of place. I hesitated, glancing at Mom. "I think we'll stay in," I said gently. "Mom needs to rest." Elaine's smile faltered for a moment, a flash of disappointment crossing her features before she masked it with a nod. "Of course, dear. Another time, then." As she left with Jake's sister, I couldn't shake off the feeling of guilt. It gnawed at me, the thought that maybe I was being too harsh, too unyielding. But then I looked at Mom. Her face etched with the quiet battle she fought every day, and I knew my loyalty lay with her. The days that followed were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and quiet evenings at home. Mom's strength ebbed and flowed like the tides, some days bright and talkative, others withdrawn and weary. Through it all, Jake and I were her steadfast anchors, holding on amidst the storm. Meanwhile, Elaine's calls became a constant undercurrent in our lives. "When are you coming to visit?" she would ask, her voice laced with a hint of reproach. "I miss you both so much." Jake handled these conversations with a patience I admired. "We're really tied up with Mom's treatments," he'd explain, his tone apologetic yet firm, "but we'll try to make it soon." Each call ended with promises left hanging like unfinished sentences, and I could sense Jake's frustration growing. It was a tug of war between his mother's wants and his own sense of duty towards mine. As Christmas neared, the air grew colder, and so did the atmosphere between us and Elaine. She invited us to her annual family Christmas party, a lavish affair that was the highlight of her social calendar. But the thought of a crowded house, with laughter and merriment, felt jarringly out of sync with our current reality. "We can't," I told Jake, my decision firm. "It's too risky for Mom, and honestly, for me too." Jake agreed, but the task of conveying this to Elaine fell heavily on his shoulders. I could only imagine how she would take this news, another rejection, another preference for my family over hers. But our priority was clear, and it wasn't the festive allure of a Christmas party. It was the quiet, somber room where my mother lay, fighting a battle that overshadowed all else. The decision not to attend Elaine's Christmas party was met with a strained understanding on her part, but the underlying disappointment was palpable. "I understand, dear," she said over the phone, her voice a mixture of resignation and thinly veiled frustration, "but you'll be missing a lovely evening." Jake's response was gentle but unwavering. "Mom's health comes first, you know that." I listened from the other side of the room, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. The situation was delicate, a fragile truce at best, and I feared any wrong word might shatter it. The days leading up to Christmas were a study in contrasts. While Elaine prepared for her festive gathering, our home was enveloped in a quiet routine of caregiving and support for my mother. The joy of the season seemed a distant echo, muffled by the more pressing concerns of health and survival. Elaine's occasional updates about the party preparations felt like intrusions from another world. "We'll have a lovely tree, and the children will put on a little play," she enthused during one call. "That sounds nice," I replied, forcing a smile into my voice. But my mind was elsewhere, on the pale figure resting in the next room, her life hanging in a delicate balance. The day of the party arrived, and with it came a flurry of messages and photos from Elaine, showcasing the festive atmosphere at her home. Each image was a splash of color and light, a stark contrast to the somber tones of our current life. "I wish you could be here," Elaine texted, a note of longing in her words. Jake sighed as he read the message. "I know she's trying to include us, but it just makes it harder." I nodded, understanding his conflict. It was a no-win situation. Staying here was an unspoken acknowledgement of our priorities, but it also meant widening the gap between us and Elaine. As evening fell, the sounds of laughter and music from Elaine's party reached us through phone calls and messages. It was as if the merriment from there underscored the silence in our home. "I feel like I'm letting her down," Jake admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. "You're doing what's right," I reassured him, although I grappled with my own doubts. Were we being unfair to Elaine? But then I looked at my mother, her face serene yet etched with the lines of her struggle, and I knew we had made the only choice we could. That night, as we sat in the quiet living room, the glow of the Christmas lights seemed dimmer, the festive spirit subdued. Our hearts were with Mom, in this battle that allowed no room for distractions, no matter how well-intentioned they might be. Elaine's world of celebrations and gatherings seemed a universe away, and for now, that was a distance we had to maintain. The aftermath of the Christmas party left a subtle shift in Elaine's attitude towards us. Her calls, once filled with exuberant chatter, now carried a note of coolness, a hint of reproach that lingered like a shadow. The emotional distance was growing, a chasm widened by unspoken grievances and misunderstood intentions. Jake and I found ourselves discussing Elaine more often, trying to navigate this delicate terrain. "She just doesn't see the whole picture," Jake would say, his brow furrowed in frustration. It's like she's only thinking about herself." I couldn't help but agree, though a part of me empathized with Elaine's loneliness. It was a confusing tangle of emotions, understanding her need for attention, yet resenting the pressure it put on us. As New Year approached, the tension reached a new height. Elaine called, her voice brittle with contained emotion. "I feel like you're avoiding me," she accused, her words sharp and direct. Jake's response was calm, but I could hear the strain in his voice. "Mom, it's not about avoiding you. We're just really focused on Nerder's mother's name right now." Elaine's reply was a mixture of hurt and anger. "You don't think I understand? I'm a mother too, but you're treating me as if I'm not part of this family." The conversation spiraled into an uncomfortable confrontation, with Elaine expressing her feelings of being sidelined and neglected. Her words were laced with a bitterness that took us by surprise. "You're always there for her, but what about me? Don't I matter?" The call ended on a tense note, leaving an uneasy silence in its wake. I looked at Jake, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. The situation was more complex than we had realized. It wasn't just about Elaine's demands for attention. It was about her feeling of loss, of not being a priority in her son's life anymore. We sat in silence, the weight of the situation settling heavily upon us. It was clear that this was more than just a case of competing demands. It was a deep-seated feeling of jealousy that Elaine harbored, a jealousy that was now openly affecting our relationship. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger towards Elaine. How could she be so self-centered, so blind to what we were going through? But then, in the quiet of the night, a thought struck me. Perhaps Elaine's jealousy was rooted in fear, a fear of losing her place in her son's life, a fear exacerbated by the crisis we were facing. It was a bitter pill to swallow, recognizing that beneath the surface of Elaine's demands and complaints lay a deeper issue, one that needed addressing. But the question remained, how could we bridge this growing gap? How could we heal the wounds that were slowly tearing our family apart? The days that followed were a dance around unspoken words and unaddressed feelings. Jake and I knew that the situation with Elaine couldn't be left to fester, yet the courage to confront it head-on was hard to muster. Each of Elaine's calls now felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing between reassurance and honesty, trying not to fall into an abyss of conflict. Finally, one chilly evening, Jake decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. "We need to talk to her, face to face," he said, determination lacing his voice. "This can't go on like this." I agreed, albeit with a sense of trepidation. The thought of confronting Elaine, of laying bare all the hurt and misunderstandings, was daunting. Yet the need for resolution, for some semblance of peace, was greater. We arranged to meet Elaine at a small cafe, a neutral ground away from the emotional landscapes of our homes. The meeting was tense from the outset. Elaine's smile was tight, her eyes guarded. We exchanged pleasantries, but they were just brittle veneers over the turmoil underneath. Jake took the lead. "Mom, we need to talk about what's been going on," he began, his voice steady but gentle. Elaine's facade wavered, her eyes flashing a mix of defensiveness and hurt. "So now you have time for me?" she retorted, the bitterness evident. "We've always had time for you," I interjected, trying to keep my voice even. "But Mom's illness, it's been consuming us." Elaine shook her head, a sigh escaping her. "I understand that she's sick, but what about me? Don't I count for anything?" The conversation unfolded, a raw and honest dialogue that peeled back layers of hurt, assumptions, and unspoken fears. Elaine spoke of feeling abandoned, of fearing that she had lost her place in Jake's life. Jake expressed his struggle to balance his duties, his guilt over not being able to meet everyone's expectations. There were tears, moments of heated words, but also instances of quiet understanding. It was a cathartic release, an airing of grievances that had long been suppressed. "I just feel so alone," Elaine confessed, her voice cracking with emotion. "Ever since you moved, I feel like I've been losing you." Jake reached across the table, taking his mother's hand. "You're not losing me, Mom, but we have to face what's in front of us right now. Nair's mother's name needs us." As the conversation drew to a close, there was a sense of relief, a lightening of the load we had all been carrying. It wasn't a magical resolution. The issues were too complex for quick fixes. But it was a start, a step towards understanding and healing. We left the cafe with a tentative plan to stay more connected, to include Elaine in our lives in ways that were manageable given our current circumstances. It was a compromise, an acknowledgement of each other's needs and limitations. That night, as I sat beside my mother, holding her frail hand in mine, I felt a sense of peace. The confrontation with Elaine had been difficult, but it had opened a door to empathy and understanding, a path to navigate this challenging journey with a little more grace and a little less burden. In the weeks that followed our meeting with Elaine, a subtle change began to weave through our interactions. The air of tension that once hung between us started to dissipate, replaced by a cautious but growing understanding. We kept Elaine more involved through regular phone calls and occasional visits, ensuring she felt included and valued. Elaine, for her part, seemed to make an effort to understand the gravity of our situation. She started asking more about my mother's health, her voice carrying genuine concern. It was a small but significant shift, indicating a willingness to see beyond her own needs. Jake and I also worked on balancing our time and energy. We realized that while my mother's illness demanded much of us, it was important not to neglect other relationships, especially with Elaine. It was a delicate balancing act, but one we were now more equipped to handle with empathy and understanding. As spring approached, bringing with it a sense of renewal, so too did our family dynamics begin to find a new equilibrium. My mother's health showed small but encouraging signs of improvement, and with it, our spirits lifted. The heavy burden of the past months started to ease, allowing us to breathe a little more freely. Elaine's transformation was perhaps the most remarkable. The jealousy and bitterness that had once clouded her interactions with us slowly faded, revealing a more compassionate and understanding side of her. She even started joining us for quiet afternoons with my mother, bringing with her an air of warmth and positivity. One such afternoon, as we sat in the garden, Elaine reached out to my mother, taking her hand gently. "I'm here for you too," she said softly. The moment was simple yet profound, marking a new chapter in our relationship. Jake and I watched this exchange, a sense of relief and gratitude washing over us. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had brought us to a place of greater understanding and compassion. As the story of our family unfolded, I realized the power of open communication and empathy. Our confrontation with Elaine had opened a door to healing, not just for our strained relationships, but also within ourselves. It taught us the importance of facing difficulties head-on, of acknowledging and addressing the emotions that drive us. The final chapter of this journey was yet to be written, but as I looked at my family, united in our garden, I felt hopeful. We had navigated the stormy waters of jealousy, illness, and misunderstanding, and had found a way to emerge stronger and more connected. Life, I understood, was a tapestry of complex emotions and experiences. But with love, patience, and a willingness to understand each other's perspectives, we could weave a story of resilience and togetherness. And in that story, we found our strength and our peace.
I always thought my wedding day would be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the moment I finally understood that my sister would never let me have anything that was truly mine. My name is Tessa, and 5 years ago, I stood in front of the mirror in my wedding dress, trying to calm my nerves before walking down the aisle. That's when Jade burst into the bridal suite, practically glowing with excitement. "Tess, oh my God, I have the most amazing news. She grabbed my hands, bouncing on her toes like we were teenagers again. I'm pregnant. The world stopped spinning for a moment. I stared at her, my mouth going dry. What? I know, right? I just found out this morning. She twirled in her bridesmaid dress, her perfect curls bouncing. I wasn't going to say anything, but I just couldn't keep it in anymore. Mom and Dad are going to flip. Jade, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Could you maybe wait until tomorrow to tell everyone? She looked at me like I'd suggested she jump off a bridge. But everyone's here now, the whole family. It's perfect timing. Before I could respond, my mother rushed in. Girls, we're almost ready to... She stopped, noticing Jade's expression. What's going on? Mom, Jade squealed. I'm having a baby. What followed was exactly what I'd feared. My mother burst into tears, hugging Jade while I stood there in my wedding dress, forgotten. Within minutes, the news spread through the bridal party, then to the guests already seated in the church. Antonio's waiting at the altar. Remington, my best friend and colleague, poked her head in. But everyone's talking about... She caught my eye and stopped. I gripped my bouquet tighter, the stems cracking under my fingers. Let's just get this over with. The ceremony was a blur. As I walked down the aisle, I heard the whispers, saw the excited glances thrown at Jade instead of me. Even during our vows, I caught my father looking at her, beaming with pride. At the reception, my father's speech somehow became more about his upcoming grandchild than his daughter's marriage. And while we're celebrating one blessing today, he said, raising his glass, we've been doubly blessed with the news of our first grandchild. The crowd erupted in cheers. Jade stood up, basking in the attention, while I sat there in my white dress, feeling invisible. You okay? Antonio squeezed my hand under the table. I forced a smile. Of course, it's wonderful news. Later during the father-daughter dance, Dad couldn't help himself. Your sister's going to need you more than ever now, he said. You've always been the responsible one, Tessa, the steady one. The steady one, the responsible one, never the special one. I know, Dad, I replied, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. The night wore on, and every conversation somehow circled back to Jade's news. Even my new mother-in-law cornered me to gush about how exciting it was to have a wedding and a baby announcement on the same day. Around midnight, I found myself hiding in the venue's bathroom, staring at my reflection. Remington found me there. Want me to kill her? She offered, only half joking. I know people. I laughed despite myself. She's pregnant. We can't kill a pregnant woman. Fine, we'll wait 9 months. She handed me a tissue. You know this is messed up, right? You're allowed to be angry. What's the point? I wiped my eyes carefully, preserving what was left of my makeup. This is just how it's always been. Jade does whatever Jade wants, and everyone acts like it's perfectly normal. It's not normal, Tess. It's... My phone buzzed, interrupting her. Mom's name flashed on the screen. If that's another excited update about Jade's morning sickness, I swear to God. Remington muttered. I answered, expecting exactly that. But my mother's voice was different this time, shaky, afraid. Tessa, are you sitting down? There's something we need to talk about. I caught Remington's eye, my heart suddenly racing. Mom, what's wrong? It's about Jade, she said, and for once, the mention of my sister's name didn't fill me with resignation. This time, it filled me with dread. The bathroom door swung open, letting in the muffled sound of the reception's music and laughter. I gripped the phone tighter, knowing somehow that whatever came next would change everything. Mom, I pressed. What about Jade? Her voice cracked. We need you to come home, right away. 5 years after my wedding, I sat in my parents' living room, staring at my sister's medical files spread across the coffee table. The same sister who had stolen my wedding spotlight was now dying of kidney failure. "Both kidneys are failing," my mother explained, her voice trembling. "The doctors say she needs a transplant within the next 6 months. And you've called me because—" I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear it. Dad leaned forward in his armchair. "You're the only match, Tessa. We've all been tested. Your mother, me, even some of Jade's close friends. But you're the only viable donor." The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of Jade taking everything from me, my body held the one thing she desperately needed. "Where is she?" I asked, noticing the unusual quiet in the house. "At the hospital," Mom replied. "She's been there for 3 days. The dialysis it's not going well." I picked up one of the medical reports, my therapy training helping me maintain a professional demeanor. "And she knows you're asking me?" "She doesn't want us to," Dad admitted. "She says she doesn't deserve to ask you for anything." "Well, she's right about that." The words came out sharper than I intended. "Tessa," Mom started, but I cut her off. "No, let's be honest for once. When was the last time Jade considered my feelings about anything? The wedding? The countless birthdays she hijacked? That scholarship she took even though she knew I'd been working toward it for years?" "That was a long time ago," Dad defended. "People change." My phone buzzed, a text from Antonio. "Everything okay? Need backup?" I typed back quickly, "Not yet. We'll call soon." "Tessa," Mom reached for my hand. "I know things haven't always been fair." I pulled away. "Fair? Mom, she announced her pregnancy at my wedding day. And she lost that baby 2 months later," Dad reminded me quietly. "Maybe that's why she's been the way she is. She was like this long before that happened." I stood up, pacing the familiar living room. "And you both enabled it. Still do." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. Through the window, I watched our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, watering her roses, the same roses I'd helped her plant when I was 12, while Jade was inside charming our parents into buying her a new phone. My phone buzzed again, this time from Remington. "Remember, you don't owe anyone anything. Your body, your choice." "The procedure," I finally said, turning back to my parents. "What does it involve?" Mom's face lit up with hope. "The doctors can explain everything. It's very safe nowadays." "I haven't said yes," I interrupted. "I'm just asking." Dad stood up, approaching me carefully. "Sweetheart, I know this is a lot to process, but she's your sister." "Is she?" I met his eyes. "Because from where I'm standing, she's been more like a tornado that keeps destroying everything in my life while you two clean up after her." "That's not fair," Mom protested. "No?" I picked up my purse. "Tell me, if the situations were reversed, would Jade donate her kidney to me?" Neither of them answered. They didn't have to. "I need time to think," I said, heading for the door. "She doesn't have much time, Tessa," Dad called after me. I paused at the doorway, my hand on the knob. For once in her life, Jade will have to wait for something she wants. That night, I dreamed of my wedding day again, but this time, when Jade announced her pregnancy, I didn't stay quiet. In the dream, I turned to her and said what I should have said 5 years ago. "No, not today. Not everything gets to be about you." I woke up with tears on my face and Antonio's arms around me. "You were talking in your sleep," he murmured. "I was?" "Mm-hmm. You said no over and over." I sat up, checking my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and a text from an unknown number that made my heart stop. "Tessa, it's Jade. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but please, if you can find it in your heart to hear me out, I'm in room 415 at Memorial Hospital. I understand if you don't come. I wouldn't come if I were you. Antonio read the message over my shoulder. What are you going to do? I stared at the phone, feeling the weight of power shift for the first time in our relationship. I'm going to make her earn it. Earn what? My forgiveness, I said, getting out of bed. And my kidney. For the first time since my wedding day, I felt completely in control. Jade needed something only I could give her, and for once, she'd have to play by my rules. You're seriously considering this? Remington set her coffee mug down hard enough to make the break room table shake. We were between therapy sessions at the clinic where we both worked, and I'd just told her about my plan. Not considering. I've decided. I pulled up Jade's Instagram on my phone, still perfectly curated despite her illness, showing her hospital room transformed into what looked like a luxury hotel suite. Look at this, even dying she's performing. Remington leaned over. 200,000 likes on a hospital selfie? Your sister's really something else. She's an influencer now. Everything's content. I scrolled through the comments. So brave. Stay strong, Queen. Praying for you. If they only knew. And you want her to tell them? I want her to tell everyone the truth about everything. I locked my phone. That's my price. Antonio's voice came from the doorway. The truth about what, exactly? I turned to find my husband watching me with concern. He worked as a pediatrician in the same medical complex, and our lunch breaks often overlapped. About who she really is, I said. About what she's done. He sat down, unwrapping his sandwich. Tess, I get it, but using your kidney as leverage? That's cruel, I finished. More cruel than what she did to me? 2 wrongs don't make a right, he said gently. Remington snorted. No, but 3 lefts do. Sometimes people need a wake-up call. My next patient's file buzzed on my phone. Sarah, 16, struggling with an emotionally manipulative sister. The irony wasn't lost on me. I need to get back. I stood up. But think about it. Jade has built her whole brand on being this perfect, inspiring person. Maybe it's time her followers saw the real her. In my office, I couldn't focus on Sarah's session. As she talked about her sister's latest betrayal, I kept seeing parallels to my own situation. And then she told everyone at school that I tried to steal her boyfriend. Sarah wiped her eyes. But I didn't. He asked me for help with his college applications, that's all. I handed her a tissue. How did that make you feel? Like I wanted to hurt her back, Sarah admitted. Is that terrible? No, I said, perhaps too quickly. It's human to want justice. After Sarah left, I sat at my desk, staring at the degrees on my wall. Family therapist. Here I was, supposedly an expert in healing family relationships, plotting revenge against my own sister. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Jade's asking for you. Please come see her. I typed back. I'll come tomorrow. I have conditions. The response was immediate. Conditions? Tessa, she's your sister. Yes, and I'm her only hope. Tell her to be ready to talk at 10 a.m. That evening, I rehearsed what I'd say to Jade. Antonio found me pacing in our kitchen, talking to myself. You sound like you're preparing for court, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Maybe I am, the court of public opinion. He turned me to face him. What happens if she says no? Then she doesn't get my kidney. And you could live with that? I pulled away. Could you live with letting someone who hurt you over and over just take a piece of you without any accountability? She's dying, Tess. She's been killing me slowly for years. The words echoed in our kitchen. Every time she took something that mattered to me, every time she made me feel small, every time our parents chose her, she's been killing the person I could have been. Antonio was quiet for a long moment. Just make sure this is really about accountability and not revenge. I went to bed early but couldn't sleep. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Tessa. This is Jennifer, Jade's old roommate from college. I heard about what's happening. There are some things you should know." I sat up, fully awake now. Jennifer had been Jade's best friend until they had a mysterious falling out 3 years ago. No one knew what happened, and Jade had blocked Jennifer on all social media. "I'm listening," I typed back. "Not over text. Can we meet? There's a lot you don't know about your sister." I thought about it for a moment. "Coffee shop on 5th Street, 9 a.m. tomorrow." "I'll be there. And Tessa, don't let her manipulate you. Not again." I lay back down, my mind racing. What did Jennifer know? What else had Jade done that I didn't know about? Tomorrow, I'd meet Jennifer. Then I'd face my sister and lay out my terms. For once, Jade would have to face the consequences of her actions. As I finally drifted off, I thought about Sarah, my young patient, and her desire for justice. Sometimes I realized the kindest thing we can do for someone is to make them face their own truth, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. Jennifer was already waiting when I arrived at the coffee shop, nervously shredding a napkin. She looked different from the polished sorority girl I remembered, more serious, with dark circles under her eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "I've been following Jade's social media posts about her condition." "You mean her perfectly filtered hospital photo shoots?" Jennifer's laugh was bitter. "Some things never change. Did you know she stole my boyfriend's senior year?" I blinked. "What?" "That's not even the worst part." She pulled out her phone. "I've kept everything. Screenshots, texts, emails. I thought someday I'd need proof." She slid the phone across the table. What I saw made my coffee turn cold in my stomach. Screenshots of Jade's messages to Jennifer's then-boyfriend, dating back to when they were roommates. But it wasn't just about the boyfriend. There were messages about business ideas Jennifer had shared with Jade in confidence, which later became Jade's original social media ventures. She built her whole influencer career on stolen ideas. Jennifer's voice cracked. "My ideas." And when I confronted her, she turned all our friends against me, said I was jealous, unstable. "Classic Jade," I muttered. "There's more." Jennifer took her phone back, scrolling. "Remember your wedding? The pregnancy announcement?" How could I forget? She wasn't pregnant. The world stopped. What? She bought a positive test online, planned the whole thing weeks in advance. I found the receipt in our apartment. Jennifer's hands shook. 2 months later, when she claimed she lost the baby, there was never any baby to lose. I gripped the table's edge, feeling sick. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I saw your parents' post asking for kidney donors, and She met my eyes. "I couldn't let her take something else from you without you knowing the whole truth." My phone buzzed. "Mom, where are you? Jade's waiting." "I have to go." I stood up. "Thank you, Jennifer, for everything." "Tessa?" She caught my arm. "Make her pay." The hospital corridor seemed longer than usual as I walked to Jade's room. My parents were waiting outside. "Finally," Mom started, but I walked past her without a word. Jade lay in her hospital bed, somehow still managing to look Instagram ready despite the IV lines. Her eyes widened when she saw my expression. "Everyone out," I said quietly. "Now, Tessa," Dad began. "Out." They left, closing the door behind them. Jade and I stared at each other in silence. "You look good," she tried. "Shut up." I pulled out my phone, showing her Jennifer's screenshots. "Want to explain?" Her face went pale. "You talked to Jennifer? Fake pregnancy announcement at my wedding? Stealing her ideas? Tell me, Jade, is there anything real about you?" "I can explain." "No." I cut her off. "For once in your life, you're gonna listen. I have your matching kidney. If you want it, here are my terms." She swallowed hard, nodding. "You're gonna post a video, a real one, No filters, no script. You're gonna tell your followers everything. The wedding, Jennifer, all of it. Every lie, every manipulation. That would destroy my career, she whispered. Should have thought about that before you built it on lies. Please, Tessa. I'm not finished. After the video, you're going to tell Mom and Dad everything, too. They deserve to know who they've been defending all these years. Tears rolled down her cheeks. They'll hate me. Welcome to my world. A nurse knocked, entering with medication. I stood up to leave. You have until tomorrow to decide, I said. Your kidney, your choice. In the hallway, my parents waited anxiously. What's going on? Mom demanded. Jade's crying. Ask her, I replied. For once in your lives, ask her the real questions. I was halfway to the elevator when Jade's voice came over the hospital PA system. Tessa, wait, please come back. People in the hallway turned to stare. I kept walking. I'll do it. Her voice echoed through the building. I'll tell everyone everything. Just please, please don't leave. I stopped, my hand on the elevator button. Behind me, I heard confused murmurs from hospital staff and visitors. My parents stood frozen in the hallway, looking bewildered. Slowly, I turned around. Jade had dragged herself and her IV pole to her doorway, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. You're right, about everything. I'll do whatever you want. Just, please don't let me die. For the first time in our lives, I saw my sister without her carefully constructed mask. No filters, no performance, just raw, desperate truth. I walked back toward her room, past our shocked parents, past the staring nurses. Get your phone, I told her. It's time to start filming. Hey everyone. Jade's voice trembled as she spoke to her phone's camera. No filters today, no editing, just truth. I stood in the corner of her hospital room, arms crossed, while our parents sat stunned in the visitors' chairs. The heart rate monitor beeped steadily in the background. I've built my entire social media presence on a lie, she continued. Actually, I've built my entire life on lies, and it's time to come clean. She glanced at me. I nodded for her to continue. 5 years ago at my sister's wedding, I announced I was pregnant. The truth is, I wasn't. Her voice cracked. I bought a fake test, planned the whole thing just to steal her spotlight, and when I pretended to lose the baby 2 months later, I used that for attention too. Mom gasped. Dad's face went ashen. But that's not all. Jade wiped her tears. My successful business ideas, stolen from my college roommate Jennifer, my perfect life, carefully curated lies. The confession went on for 15 minutes. With each revelation, our parents seemed to physically shrink in their chairs. When Jade finally finished, her follower count was already dropping by the thousands. Comments are coming in, she whispered, staring at her phone. Unfollow. Disgusting. Cancel her. She looked up at me. Happy now? Before I could answer, the door burst open. A hospital PR representative rushed in, looking panicked. Miss Brewer, we're getting calls from media outlets. This video is going viral. Good, I said. Not good, she countered. Your sister's medical condition is now public knowledge, and there are allegations of organ donation coercion. This could become a legal nightmare. My stomach dropped. I hadn't considered that angle. Mom finally found her voice. Jade, how could you? The pregnancy, the wedding? I'm sorry, Jade whispered. Sorry doesn't begin to cover it. Dad stood up, looking older than I'd ever seen him. We defended you. For years we defended you. Dad, no. He held up his hand. I can't even look at you right now. They left the room, Mom sobbing, Dad supporting her. The PR representative followed, already on her phone with damage control. Jade's phone kept buzzing with notifications. My sponsors are dropping me. she said numbly. Everything I built? You mean everything you stole? You've ruined my life. No, I corrected her. You ruined your life. I just made you admit it. A new notification popped up on her phone. She stared at it, then started laughing, a hollow, desperate sound. What? I asked. It's trending. Jade Brewer is over party. She showed me the screen. But look at the comments under it. I took the phone. Among the hate and cancellation posts were other stories. Women sharing their experiences with toxic siblings, stories of wedding disasters, stolen opportunities, family betrayals. You've started something, Jade said quietly, but maybe I can make it mean something. What are you talking about? She sat up straighter, wiping her eyes. What if I used this? Really used it? Not for attention or likes, but to start a conversation about accountability, about toxic family dynamics? I scoffed. More manipulation? No, she met my eyes. Real this time, raw, honest, a movement about owning our mistakes and making amends. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking. I could go live right now, talk about why I did what I did, about growing up always feeling like I needed to be the center of attention, about therapy, about change. And this has nothing to do with saving your image? It has everything to do with saving my life, not just the kidney, my actual life, being honest for once. She looked at me pleadingly. Will you help me? Before I could answer, Jennifer appeared in the doorway. I saw the video, she said. Everyone's seeing it. Jade's face crumpled. Jennifer, Save it. Jennifer walked in, pulling up a chair. But I heard what you just said about starting a movement, about accountability. She glanced at me. Maybe it's not the worst idea. My phone buzzed, a text from Antonio. Have you seen Twitter? This is bigger than you and Jade now. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the fear and desperation, I saw something I'd never seen before, a glimmer of genuine remorse. If we do this, I said slowly, it has to be real. No more performances. Jade nodded eagerly. I promise. And you'll get professional help? Already asked the nurse for therapist recommendations. Jennifer and I exchanged looks. The heart monitor kept its steady rhythm as we stood on the edge of something that felt bigger than our personal drama. Okay, I finally said, let's go live. We're trending in 27 countries, Remington announced, walking into Jade's hospital room with her laptop. 2 weeks had passed since the initial confession video, and what started as a scandal had evolved into something none of us expected. The Today Show called again, Jennifer added, not looking up from her phone. She'd become our unofficial media coordinator. They want both of you on Monday. Jade adjusted her hospital bed to sit up straighter. Despite the dialysis treatments, she looked stronger, more present. Maybe it was the weight of secrets lifting from her shoulders. What do you think? She asked me. Should we do it? Before I could answer, a notification pinged on the room's TV, which was streaming comments from our latest live session. My sister stole my college fund and my parents still defend her. Jade read aloud. Your story gave me the courage to finally confront them. That's the 5th story like that today, Jennifer noted. I watched another comment scroll past. Started therapy because of searing sisterhood accountability. Thank you for showing me it's okay to set boundaries. We should do the show, I decided. But no makeup team, no wardrobe styling. We do this our way. Jade nodded. Raw and real. A knock at the door interrupted us. Mom stood there, looking uncertain. Can I come in? The room fell silent. We hadn't seen our parents since the confession video. They'd been processing, according to their texts. Of course, Jade said softly. Mom walked in slowly. taking in the laptops, phones, and makeshift media center we'd created in the hospital room. "I've been watching your videos," she said. "All of them. The lives, the discussions about family dynamics." She took a shaky breath. "I owe you both an apology." "Mom," Jade started. "No, let me finish." Mom pulled up a chair. "I failed you, Jade, by never holding you accountable. And Tessa," her voice broke, "I failed you by making you feel less important, less special. You were always the strong one because we never gave you a choice to be anything else." Remington quietly gathered her things. "We'll give you guys some space." She and Jennifer slipped out, leaving us with our mother. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "Still struggling," Mom admitted, "but he's watching too. He even joined one of those online support groups for parents dealing with family conflict." Jade's phone buzzed. Another media request. She ignored it. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said, "for making you and Dad look foolish, for manipulating everyone." "I'm sorry too," I added, "for using the kidney as leverage." "Don't apologize for that," Mom surprised us by saying. "Sometimes it takes something dramatic to break unhealthy patterns. Look what you've created." She gestured to the TV, where the hashtag Sisterhood Accountability was still trending. Stories poured in from around the world. Sisters confronting decades of rivalry, families beginning healing processes, people seeking therapy. "We're getting messages from psychologists wanting to contribute," I explained. "They're offering professional perspectives on sibling dynamics, family trauma." "And people are actually listening," Jade added. "Not just for the drama, but for the healing." A notification popped up on my phone, a message from one of my therapy clients. "Watched your live session with your sister. Finally told my parents about my brother's bullying. They're getting him help." Mom read it over my shoulder. "You two have started something important. We're thinking of turning it into a foundation," Jade said, "using my platform for actual good this time, supporting family therapy programs, funding counseling for people who can't afford it, with proper credit to the people whose ideas we use," I added pointedly. Jade managed a small smile. "Obviously." The door opened again. This time it was Antonio with lunch. "Brought enough for everyone," he said, then noticed Mom. "Oh, hello." "Stay," Mom stood up. "I should go anyway. Your father? We're having our first therapy session this afternoon." As she headed for the door, she turned back. "Girls, I'm proud of you. Both of you. For different reasons." After she left, we divided up the sandwiches Antonio brought. Jade picked at hers, looking thoughtful. "What is it?" I asked. "The Today Show appearance," she said. "I want to use it to announce something." "The foundation?" "No." She met my eyes. "I want to tell everyone that I'm declining your kidney." Antonio dropped his sandwich. "What?" "I can't take it," Jade continued. "Not even with the confession, not even with the movement we've started. It needs to be my choice to face consequences." I stared at my sister, this new version of her I was just getting to know. "The doctors say I can survive on dialysis while I wait for another donor," she added. "It might take years, but maybe I need those years to prove I've really changed." Antonio squeezed my hand as I processed this. "You'd do that?" I asked. "Give up a guaranteed donation?" Jade nodded. "It's time I saved myself instead of taking from others." For the first time in our lives, I saw my sister clearly, and she saw herself. The Today Show studio was smaller than I expected. Jade sat beside me on the interview couch, both of us makeup-free as promised. The host, Maria, adjusted her earpiece as the producer counted down. 3, 2, 1. We're here with sisters Tessa and Jade, whose viral story about kidney donation and family accountability has sparked a global conversation. Maria began, "Ladies, thank you for being here. Thank you for having us, I replied, feeling the heat of the studio lights. Jade, let's start with you. You're declining your sister's kidney donation. Why? Jade took a deep breath. Because true accountability means accepting consequences. I've spent my whole life taking from others, especially Tessa, taking her moments, her opportunities. I can't take her kidney too. Even if it means waiting years for another donor? Even then, Jade's voice was steady. Our movement, just sisterhood, accountability, isn't just about confessing past wrongs. It's about doing the work to become better. Maria turned to me. Tessa, how do you feel about your sister's decision? Before I could answer, a commotion erupted backstage. Through the studio doors, I saw our father pushing past security. Sir, you can't, a producer started. Those are my daughters. Dad's voice carried across the set. Maria looked uncertainly at the cameras. Should we cut? No, I said, standing up. Let him come. Dad walked onto the set, looking lost under the bright lights. He hadn't shaved in days, and his eyes were red-rimmed. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said, but I've been watching everything from home, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. The studio was absolutely quiet. Even the cameramen seemed to be holding their breath. Dad? Jade's voice was small. He turned to face the cameras. I'm these girls' father, and I need to be part of this accountability movement too, because I failed them both. Maria, ever the professional, gestured to an empty chair. Would you like to join us? Dad sat down heavily. I watched my youngest daughter hurt my oldest daughter over and over, and instead of stopping it, I made excuses. I told Tessa to be understanding, to be the bigger person. I put the responsibility of keeping peace on a child who deserved to be protected. Tears rolled down Jade's cheeks. I felt my own eyes burning. And Jade, he continued, I failed you by never teaching you consequences. I thought I was showing love, but I was teaching you that it was okay to hurt people, that you wouldn't have to face the results of your actions. Maria handed him a tissue. You've been in therapy since this started? 3 times a week, Dad nodded, learning about enabling, about healthy family dynamics. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, looking at my own failures as a father. It wasn't all failures, I found myself saying. You loved us. Love isn't enough, he replied. You have to love people the right way, the way that helps them grow. Jade reached for his hand. Dad, no, let me finish. He straightened in his chair. I've made a decision too. I'm going to get tested as a kidney donor. What? Jade and I said simultaneously. You're my daughter, Jade. If anyone should make this sacrifice for you, it should be me, not your sister who you've already taken so much from. The studio lights suddenly felt too bright. Maria leaned forward, sensing the moment. Would you be willing to share this journey with our viewers? The testing process, the therapy, the healing of your family? I looked at Jade, then at our father. Something was shifting, like tectonic plates finally finding their proper alignment. Yes, Jade said firmly, but not as content, not as entertainment, as truth. Raw and real, I added, echoing our new motto. Dad squeezed Jade's hand. Together this time, the right way. Maria turned to the camera. We'll take a quick break and be right back with more from this extraordinary family. As soon as the red lights on the cameras went dark, Dad pulled both of us into a hug. It was awkward and tearful and real, everything our family had never allowed itself to be. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Jennifer. Twitter's exploding. Your dad just took the Mauer sisterhood accountability to family accountability. Another message popped up from Remington. This is what healing looks like. Real, messy, unscripted healing. The producer started counting down again. We pulled apart, wiping our eyes. Ready to keep going? Maria asked gently. I looked at my sister and my father, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. No masks, no performances, no desperate grabs for attention or approval. Just 3 people doing the hard work of becoming better. Ready, we said together. The red lights blinked on, and we continued our story, not for views or likes or trending hashtags, but for truth, for healing, for hope. Testing complete, Dr. Rivera announced, looking up from her tablet. Congratulations, sir. You're a match. Dad gripped the arms of his chair in the consultation room. Jade reached for his hand while I sat nearby, still processing the news. What are the risks? Mom asked from her corner seat. Given his age and health, moderate, but manageable. Dr. Rivera turned to Dad. The choice is yours. No, Dad said firmly. The choice is Jade's. My sister looked startled. What do you mean? I'm offering my kidney, he explained. But you need to decide if you're ready to accept it. Really ready. The accountability movement we'd started had grown beyond us. Our foundation now funded therapy for hundreds of families. Support groups had sprung up worldwide. But this moment, this was still deeply personal. I've been in therapy for 3 months, Jade said slowly, working on my narcissistic tendencies, my need for attention, my history of manipulation. She squeezed Dad's hand. But I don't want to accept your kidney just to prove I've changed. Then why would you accept it? I asked. She met my eyes. Because I want to live, not for followers or fame or approval. Just live. Do better. Be better. Dr. Rivera cleared her throat. We don't need an answer today. You can... Yes, Jade interrupted. I accept, if you're sure, Dad. He nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. Mom started crying. Dr. Rivera began explaining the procedure schedule, but a commotion outside the office interrupted her. Jennifer burst in, waving her tablet. Sorry to interrupt, but you all need to see this. She pulled up a video that was trending. A teenage girl speaking directly to camera. Because of the Brewer Sisters movement, I finally told my parents about my brother's abuse. He's getting help now. We all are. Thank you for showing us that families can heal. Another video started automatically after it. Watching Jade decline her sister's kidney taught me that sometimes love means not taking something, even if it's offered. I finally stopped letting my mom guilt me into giving her money she'll never pay back. And another? My father's watching these videos about family accountability. Yesterday, he apologized to me for the first time in my life. The room fell silent as we watched story after story unfold. This is bigger than us now, I said quietly. But it started with us, Jade replied, with you forcing me to face myself. With you choosing to change, I corrected. Dad cleared his throat. Dr. Rivera, how soon can we schedule the surgery? Given the test results, we could do it next week. No, Jade said firmly. Not until after the Foundation's first family therapy retreat. I promised to speak there. I smiled, recognizing this new version of my sister, one who kept her commitments to others. 2 weeks then, Dr. Rivera made some notes. I'll have my team contact you with details. As we left the hospital, reporters were waiting outside. They'd been following our story since the Today Show appearance. Any comment on the test results? Is it true you're a match? Dad stepped forward. Yes, I'm a match, and yes, we're proceeding with the transplant. But more importantly, he looked at Jade and me. We're proceeding with healing, the right way this time. Later that evening, we gathered at my parents' house. Antonio brought dinner, Remington brought wine, and sparkling cider for Jade, who couldn't drink before surgery. And Jennifer brought her laptop to show us the latest foundation statistics. Over 10,000 families have signed up for sponsored therapy, she reported, and the accountability workshops are booked solid for 6 months. Speaking of accountability, Jade set down her glass. There's something I need to say. She turned to face me. Thank you, Tessa, not for offering your kidney, for refusing to let me have it without earning it, for making me face myself. You did the hard part, I said. No, she shook her head. You did the hard part for years, watching me take and take, being the understanding one. I'm sorry it took almost dying for me to see it. Mom wiped her eyes. We're all seeing things clearly now. To clarity, Antonio raised his glass. And to healing. To healing? We echoed. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, my teenage patient. Saw your sister's latest video about choosing change. Finally stood up to my sister today. Thank you for showing me how. I showed the message to Jade. She smiled, a real smile, not her old camera-ready one. We're going to keep helping people, aren't we? She asked. Yes, I said, but this time we do it together, as equals. Dad wrapped an arm around each of us. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Patterson's roses blooming in the evening light, the same roses I'd helped plant all those years ago. Some things take time to grow, I realized. Some things have to break through hard ground to reach the sun. But with truth, with work, with real love, everything can bloom eventually, even us, especially us.
The numbers glared at me from my phone screen like an accusation. 0. Our joint emergency savings account, the one I'd been faithfully building for 3 years, was completely empty. My hands trembled as I refreshed the banking app again, praying it was just a glitch. My name is Natasha, and until this moment, I thought I was living the American dream. Small-town Texas girl makes it big in New York City, complete with the fancy apartment, successful husband, and thriving career in international humanitarian law. Funny how quickly dreams can turn to dust. Everything okay, honey? Alex's voice floated from our designer kitchen. I could hear him opening his morning kombucha, probably wearing that smug smile he always had before heading to his investment firm. Just checking our accounts, I said, keeping my voice steady. Did you move our emergency fund somewhere? The pause that followed was a fraction too long. Oh, that? Yeah, I had to use it for a temporary business opportunity. Don't worry, it'll be back with interest in a few weeks. The wooden spoon I was holding snapped in half. I stared at the broken pieces, thinking about my daddy's words the day I left Texas. City folk have different values, Butterfly. Don't let them change yours. A business opportunity, I repeated, my accent thickening like it always did when I was angry. Our entire emergency fund? Alex appeared in the doorway, adjusting his Italian silk tie. Come on, Nat, you know how these things work. High risk, high reward. I couldn't pass it up. You mean like that crypto investment last year? Or the NFT collection that was going to make us millionaires? He waved dismissively. This is different. Trust me. Trust. The word hit me like a slap. I thought about the long nights I'd spent working extra cases to build that fund, while he spent evenings at networking events that always seemed to involve expensive whiskey and designer suits. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Laura. How's my favorite city slicker? Daddy's asking when you're coming home for a visit. I need to get to work, I said, grabbing my briefcase. We'll talk about this later. Don't make it a big deal, Nat. Alex called after me. You're starting to sound like one of those small-town folk you left behind. I stopped at the door, my hand tightening on the handle. Those small-town folk taught me that a man's word is his bond. Guess that lesson didn't make it past the Holland Tunnel. The spring air hit my face as I stepped onto the street, the familiar cacophony of Manhattan washing over me. My colleague Christine was waiting at our usual coffee spot, her face lighting up when she saw me. You look like you just ate a whole lemon, she said, sliding me my usual order. Spill. I told her about the empty account, watching her expression shift from shock to anger. That's theft, she exclaimed, drawing looks from nearby tables. You need to confront him. Get a lawyer. No. I cut her off, an idea taking shape in my mind. That's not how we handle things where I'm from. What do you mean? I thought about the hidden safe behind the vintage painting in our study, the one Alex didn't know about, the one containing documents that could unravel his carefully constructed world of lies. My daddy always said karma's too slow, I said, stirring my coffee. Sometimes it needs a little push. Christine leaned forward, lowering her voice. Natasha, what are you planning? I smiled, feeling the weight of my wedding ring like a shackle. Let's just say Alex isn't the only one who knows how to play the long game. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Laura. Remember what Mama always said? The best revenge is living well. I typed back, what about the second best revenge? Looking up at the towering skyscrapers, I felt something shift inside me. Alex thought he'd married a simple country girl he could manipulate. He was about to learn that Texas women aren't just pretty faces and sweet tea. We're barbed wire wrapped in silk. First, I told Christine, I need you to help me find a good real estate agent. I think it's time Alex and I downsized. Downsized? She asked, confusion clear on her face. Trust me, I said, the plan crystallizing in my mind. By the time I'm done, Alex will have taught himself the hardest lesson of all. Which is? I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. Walking to the office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Alex wanted to play games with our future? Fine. But he was about to learn that some country girls know exactly how to play by city rules, and win. I spent the next week playing the perfect wife. Made Alex's favorite meals, laughed at his jokes, and never once mentioned the empty account. But behind every smile was a plan taking shape, like a storm brewing over Texas plains. You're scaring me a little, Laura said during our weekly video call. I was in my office, door locked, speaking in hushed tones. This calm version of you isn't natural. Remember when Tommy Peterson stole your horse in high school? You chased him down Main Street with Daddy's shotgun. I've learned subtlety since then, I said, adjusting my webcam. Besides, this isn't about revenge, it's about justice. Laura's eyebrows shot up. Those sound like the same thing with different makeup on. You haven't heard the best part, I continued, leaning closer to the screen. Yesterday, I found receipts in his coat pocket. He's been investing in a gentleman's club downtown. Turns out his business opportunities involve poles and private dances. That son of a... Exactly. I glanced at my office door. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember that safe I had installed when we renovated? The one behind the ugly painting he loves? That's the one. Alex thinks all our important documents are in his office safe, but I've been quietly moving things, deed to the house, insurance policies, everything that matters, into mine. He has no idea it exists. Laura whistled low. Girl, you're playing chess while he's playing checkers. I learned from the best, I said, thinking of our mama's favorite saying, a woman should always have something saved for a rainy day, and men are notorious stormbringers. A knock at my door made me jump. Nat? It was Christine. Got a minute? Call you later, I told Laura, ending the call just as Christine entered. You won't believe what I just heard, Christine said, closing the door behind her. Alex's firm is under investigation. Something about irregular trading patterns. My heart skipped. How do you know? My client works for the SEC. Nothing official yet, but there's smoke. She perched on my desk. Whatever you're planning, you might want to speed it up. I pulled out my phone, showing her the real estate listing I'd been crafting. Already ahead of you. Our neighborhood's hot right now. Houses are selling within days. You really think he'll agree to sell? Oh, he will. I smiled, remembering the carefully planted complaints I'd been making. Especially after I mentioned how much the property taxes have gone up, and how the maintenance is eating into his investment capital. Christine shook her head. You're terrifying, you know that? I'm motivated, I corrected. There's a difference. That evening, I put my plan into motion. Alex was in his home office, probably hiding more financial disasters, when I brought him his favorite whiskey. Rough day? I asked, noting the tension in his shoulders. Market's volatile, he muttered, not looking up from his laptop. Nothing to worry about. I perched on his desk, deliberately knocking over a stack of papers. Oh, I'm so sorry. As I helped him gather them, I caught glimpses of red numbers and urgent notices. You know, I said carefully, I was thinking about what you said regarding investment opportunities. His head snapped up. The house, I continued. It's worth almost double what we paid. With the market this hot, we can't sell, he said quickly. This is our home. I shrugged, standing to leave. Just thinking about all that capital, sitting there doing nothing. But you're right. Probably better to keep paying those rising property taxes. Later that night, I heard him on the phone, speaking in hushed tones about margin calls and extension requests. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, fighting the guilt threatening to derail my resolve. My phone lit up with a text from Laura. Still awake? I slipped out to the balcony before calling her. The city lights sparkled below, a stark contrast to the star-filled Texas skies I missed. Having second thoughts? She asked without preamble. He's in trouble, Laura. Real trouble. Part of me wants to stop. Tell him I know everything. And what would Mama say about that? I closed my eyes, hearing Mama's voice clear as day. A man who betrays your trust will do it again. Only bigger next time. You're right, I said. But it's hard playing this role. Remember when that rattler got in the chicken coop? Laura asked. Daddy said sometimes you have to be patient. Let the snake show itself before you strike. I looked through the window at Alex, still hunched over his desk, probably digging himself deeper into whatever hole he'd made. The listing goes live tomorrow, I said. No turning back after that. Good girl, Laura replied. And Natasha? Remember, you're not just doing this for yourself. You're doing it for every woman who ever trusted the wrong man. After hanging up, I touched the cold railing, letting the night air clear my head. Tomorrow, I'd start the endgame. Alex thought he was facing a financial crisis. He had no idea he was facing a Texas tornado in designer heels. The listing went live on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, our realtor had scheduled 12 viewings. I watched Alex pace our living room, phone pressed to his ear, his voice getting higher with each call. What do you mean, margin call? He hissed into the phone. I just need 2 more weeks. No, you don't understand. I pretended to focus on my laptop while he unraveled. The SEC investigation Christine mentioned must have been picking up steam. Perfect timing. Honey, I called out sweetly, the first buyers will be here in an hour. Should we hide the whiskey bottles in your office? He ended his call abruptly. I can't deal with this today, Nat. Can't you handle it? Of course, I said, noting how his hands trembled. But you should know. They're offering cash deals. We might need to move fast. His head snapped up. Cash? How much? Well above asking. I pulled up the offers on my phone. Enough to solve a lot of temporary problems. The desperation in his eyes would have broken my heart 2 months ago. Now it just confirmed I was on the right track. Maybe we should consider it, he said, trying to sound casual. The market might not stay this hot. I hid my smile behind my coffee cup. Whatever you think is best, dear. The doorbell rang. Christine, right on schedule. I'd asked her to drop by during the viewings, playing her part perfectly. Oh my God, this place is gorgeous, she gushed, loud enough for Alex to hear. But isn't it a bit much for 2 people? My cousin just sold her place in this neighborhood for a ridiculous amount. Alex emerged from his office, suddenly interested. Really? When? Last week? Christine said. All cash offer, closed in 10 days. They're buying everything in this area. I watched Alex's expression shift from worried to calculating. The same look he'd had before emptying our savings. The first potential buyers arrived, a wealthy couple who made all the right noises about crown molding and natural light. I led them through each room, carefully avoiding the study with its hidden safe. The study's being painted, I explained smoothly. But it's lovely. Original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves. Alex followed us like a shadow, jumping in whenever money was mentioned. We've put a lot into this place. Top of the line everything. After they left, he pulled me aside. They seemed serious. Very, I agreed. Their agent mentioned they could close quickly. How quickly? 2 weeks, maybe less. I touched his arm gently. Alex, is everything okay? You seem tense. He shrugged off my hand. Just busy. If they make a good offer, let's take it. The next viewing brought a developer who talked about turning the building into luxury condos. Alex's eyes lit up at their numbers. Between showings, I slipped into the study, checking the safe behind that hideous painting Alex had insisted on keeping. Everything was still there. Documents, emergency cash, and evidence of his business dealings I'd been quietly collecting. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. How's the trap coming along? The mouse is circling the cheese, I replied. Christine lingered after the last viewing, waiting until Alex disappeared into his office for another tense phone call. You should see him at work, she whispered. He's terrified. Rumor has it the SEC is looking into everyone at his level. Good, I said, but my voice wavered slightly. Christine grabbed my hand. Having doubts? No, I said firmly. Just remembering something Daddy told me about ranch work. Said the hardest part of putting down a rabid animal isn't pulling the trigger. It's looking in its eyes beforehand. This isn't the same thing, Natasha. Alex made his choices. The study door opened and Alex emerged looking pale. Nat, can we talk about the offers? Christine took her cue to leave. Call me later, she mouthed as she left. I followed Alex to the kitchen where he'd already poured himself a large whiskey. I think we should take the developer's offer, he said. They can close next week. So soon? I widened my eyes. But where would we live? We can rent for a while, invest the profits. He drained his glass. The markets, there are opportunities right now. Like the opportunity that ate our savings? The words slipped out before I could stop them. He froze. What's that supposed to mean? I forced a laugh. Nothing, honey. Just nervous about moving, I guess. Later, in bed, I listened to him toss and turn, probably seeing dollar signs and SEC warnings in his dreams. My phone lit up with one last text from Laura. Remember, the meanest snakes always bite themselves first. I turned toward the window, watching city lights flicker like distant stars. By this time next week, Alex would learn exactly how much his betrayal had cost him. And I'd be gone, leaving nothing but an empty safe and a stack of receipts from his business meetings for the SEC to find. Sometimes karma needs a helping hand, and mine was steady as steel. The developer's offer came in at breakfast. Alex nearly choked on his coffee when he saw the number. They're offering 15% over asking, he said, hands shaking as he held his phone. All cash, 7-day close. I buttered my toast with deliberate slowness. That seems awfully fast. Are you sure about this? We'd be idiots not to take it. He was already typing a response. I'll tell them yes. Don't we need to discuss it first? I kept my voice carefully neutral, watching him squirm. Nat, please, trust me on this one. There it was again. Trust. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. My phone buzzed, Christine calling. Hey, got a minute? It's about work. In my home office, door locked, Christine didn't waste time. The SEC issued subpoenas this morning, Alex's whole department. My heart raced. When? They're being served today. Whatever you're planning, you need to move fast. I glanced at the calendar on my wall. The closing's in 7 days. I'll be gone in 6. Gone where? Better if you don't know. I lowered my voice. But I need one last favor. Later that afternoon, I met our realtor to sign preliminary paperwork. Alex was too busy to attend, which suited me fine. Each signature brought me closer to freedom. Your husband seemed very eager to close quickly, the realtor commented. He's an eager person, I replied, signing another document. Always chasing the next big thing. Back home, I found Alex in the study, frantically shredding papers. He jumped when I entered. Just clearing out old files, he said quickly. For the move. I nodded, noting how close he was to the painting hiding my safe. Need help? No. He stepped between me and the shredder. No thank you. Why don't you start packing the bedroom? Upstairs, I called Laura. The SEC is moving in, I told her. I need you to wire the money tomorrow. Already done, she said. Account's set up in your maiden name, just like you asked. Jesse's got the guest room ready whenever you need it. I sank onto the bed, suddenly overwhelmed. Laura, what if I'm wrong? What if... Stop right there, she cut in. Remember when Mama caught Daddy gambling away their savings? What did she do? Cleaned out the accounts and left him with nothing but his boots and his pride. And what happened after? He sobered up, earned back her trust, and never gambled again. I smiled at the memory. They were stronger for it. Exactly. Sometimes love means letting people hit rock bottom. A crash from downstairs interrupted us. I found Alex in the kitchen, a broken whiskey bottle at his feet. Everything okay? I asked, helping him clean up. Fine, he snapped. Just perfect. Why wouldn't it be perfect? I watched him sweep up glass, his expensive suit stained with liquor. Alex, if you need to talk. I said I'm fine. He threw the dustpan into the sink. Just leave me alone. That night, I lay awake listening to him pace the study. Papers rustling, drawers opening and closing, the shredder running continuously. At 3 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Christine. SEC team arriving at the office tomorrow. It's happening. I slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen, making coffee like I had so many nights back home when storms were rolling in. The city sparkled beyond our windows, beautiful and cold. Alex appeared in the doorway looking haunted. You're up? Couldn't sleep. I poured him a cup. Want to talk about it? For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd fallen in love with. Vulnerable, real. Then his walls slammed back up. Nothing to talk about, he said, but his hands shook as he took the cup. Just work stuff. Must be pretty serious work stuff to have you shredding files at midnight. His head snapped up. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I sipped my coffee. Just making conversation. He stared at me for a long moment. You know something. I know lots of things, Alex. Like how to balance a checkbook, how to keep promises, how to tell when someone's lying to my face. The color drained from his. Nat, get some sleep. I cut him off, setting down my cup. We have a lot of packing to do tomorrow. Back in bed, I watched the sunrise paint Manhattan gold. My phone buzzed one last time. Laura sending a photo of my old room back home, ready and waiting. Jesse says he'll drive up to help you move. She wrote, just say when. I typed back, tell him to be ready. The storm's about to break. Through the wall, I could hear Alex still pacing, still shredding, still trying to outrun his choices. In 6 days, he'd learn what every Texan knows. You can't outrun a tornado. You can only hope you've built your house strong enough to survive it. And I'd built mine out of steel and secrets, ready for whatever came next. The SEC hit Alex's office like a Texas tornado. I watched it unfold through Christine's updates while pretending to pack our bedroom. They're pulling everyone into conference rooms, she texted. Alex looks like he's seen a ghost. My phone rang. Laura. You watching the financial news? Your husband's firm is all over it. Not my husband for much longer, I said, folding another empty box. Jesse's still coming tomorrow. Already on his way. But Natasha, Daddy knows something's up. He's worried. I sat on the edge of our bed, soon to be just his bed. What did you tell him? That his little girl finally learned to stand up for herself. He smiled and said, about damn time. The front door slammed. Alex was home early, very early. Gotta go. I whispered, ending the call. I found him in the kitchen, pouring whiskey with shaking hands. His tie was loose, hair disheveled. "Rough day?" I asked innocently. He drained his glass. "They're investigating everyone. Freezing accounts. It's a witch hunt. Sounds serious." I leaned against the counter. "Should we be worried about the house closing?" "The closing's fine," he snapped. "Everything's fine, just keep packing." "Alex," I said softly, "if you need to tell me something." He stared at me for a long moment. "What do you know?" "I know our savings disappeared. I know you've been lying about business meetings. I know—" "Stop." He gripped the counter. "Just stop. You don't understand how things work here. This isn't your small-town Texas world where everything's simple." "No," I agreed. "Back home, we call stealing what it is." The whiskey glass shattered in his hand. Blood mixed with expensive liquor on our marble countertop. "Careful," I said, reaching for a towel. "Let me help." "Don't touch me." He jerked away. "You have no idea what I'm dealing with. Then tell me. Help me understand why our emergency fund had to fund your emergency." His laugh was hollow. "You want to understand? Fine. I made some bad calls, borrowed against positions I shouldn't have, then tried to cover it up with other people's money. Happy now?" "Other people's money," I repeated. "Like our savings?" "It was temporary." He paced the kitchen. "I just needed time to turn it around. But now with the SEC..." "Now what?" I pressed. "What happens now, Alex?" He stopped pacing, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "What did you tell them?" "Tell who?" "The SEC." He slammed his hand on the counter. "Did you talk to them? Show them something?" I stepped back, remembering Daddy's warnings about cornered animals. "I haven't talked to anyone, but maybe you should." His phone buzzed, probably his lawyer. He answered without taking his eyes off me. "What?" "No, I understand. Yes, I'll be right there." He ended the call looking suddenly deflated. "I have to go." "Alex? Don't wait up." After he left, I called Christine. "How bad is it?" "Bad," she said. "They're talking criminal charges, multiple counts of fraud." I closed my eyes, fighting unexpected tears. "The closing's in 3 days." "You sure you want to go through with this?" "Maybe he needs you now more than ever. He needs consequences more than he needs me." I wiped my eyes. "Did you get the documents I sent?" "All copied and ready for the SEC. But Natasha, once I turn these in..." "I know. No going back." I spent the next hour on the phone with Laura, finalizing details. Jesse would arrive tomorrow with his truck, ready to help me disappear while Alex was dealing with his lawyers. "The guest room's all ready," Laura said. "Daddy even put fresh flowers in there. Tell him." My voice cracked. "Tell him his little girl's coming home." That night, Alex didn't return. I packed my real belongings into boxes marked Goodwill, things he'd never think to check. The rest could burn with his house of cards. At midnight, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Hicks, this is David from the SEC. We'd like to speak with you about your husband's activities." I showed Laura the text. "Right on schedule," she said. "You ready for tomorrow?" "Ready as a rattler in spring," I replied, using one of Daddy's sayings. I spent my last night in our bedroom looking at old photos, Alex and me in happier times, before greed poisoned everything. Part of me still loved the man in those pictures, the one who used to bring me wildflowers and dance with me in the kitchen. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who'd steal from his own wife and lie to her face. My phone buzzed one last time. "Jesse. Just crossed into Pennsylvania. See you tomorrow, darling." I touched the screen, thinking about home, about second chances and fresh starts. Alex thought he was facing an SEC investigation. He had no idea he was about to face Texas justice instead. Sometimes karma needs a woman's touch. And mine was about to leave a mark he'd never forget. Jesse arrived at dawn in his battered pickup truck, looking exactly like the piece of home he was. Alex had spent the night at his lawyer's office, making my escape easier than expected. "Well, don't you look like a woman on a mission?" Jesse drawled, pulling me into a bear hug that smelled of leather and Texas sun. "Keep your voice down," I whispered, though I was smiling. "The doorman gossips." We worked quickly, loading the pre-packed boxes marked Goodwill into his truck. Each contained pieces of my real life. Photos, documents, family heirlooms I'd quietly collected over the past week. "Last stop," I said, leading Jesse to the study. "Help me with this painting." The hidden safe opened with a satisfying click. Inside lay everything I needed: emergency cash, documents, and a manila envelope fat with evidence of Alex's creative accounting. "Damn," Jesse whispered, watching me empty the safe. "You really are your mama's daughter." My phone buzzed. Christine. "SEC team asking questions about Alex's personal accounts. When should I give them the documents?" "After the closing," I typed back. "Let him sign everything first." Jesse helped me replace the painting, slightly crooked, just as Alex always kept it. "You sure about this, darlin'? No going back once we hit the road." "I'm sure." I took one last look at the study. The front door opened. Alex's voice carried down the hall. "Nat, why is there a truck outside?" Jesse and I froze. This wasn't part of the plan. "Quick," I whispered, shoving the safe's contents into Jesse's hands. "Out the service entrance. I'll handle this." Jesse slipped out just as Alex appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd aged years overnight. "Who was that man?" he demanded. "Jesse, old family friend." I kept my voice casual. "Helping me sort donations before the move." Alex's eyes darted around the room, lingering on the painting. "At 7 a.m? "Early bird gets the worm," I said, channeling my mama's breezy tone. "How'd it go with the lawyers?" He loosened his tie, collapsing into his office chair. "They want me to take a deal. Turn evidence against the others." "Others?" "Don't." He held up his hand. "Just don't ask questions you don't want answers to." My phone buzzed again. The realtor. "Closing moved up to 2 p.m. today. Buyers insist." I showed Alex the message. "That's good, right? Faster we close, faster you get the cash." Something shifted in his expression. "What did you just say?" "The closing, No." He stood slowly. "You said you get the cash, not we." My heart raced, but I kept my face neutral. Figure of speech. Like hell it was. He stepped closer. "What are you planning, Natasha?" "Nothing, The SEC questions. The quick sale. That man helping you this morning." His eyes widened. "You're leaving." "Alex, you're leaving and you're taking everything." He lunged for the painting. I backed away as he ripped it from the wall, revealing the safe. His hands shook as he tried the combination. "It won't open," I said quietly. "I changed it last month." He whirled on me. "Open it." "No. Open it." He slammed his hand against the wall. "Whatever you think you know, I know enough." I straightened my spine, channeling every strong woman in my family. "I know about the strip clubs, the gambling, the fraud. I know you stole our savings to cover your tracks. I know everything, Alex." His face went from red to white. "You turned me in." "No," I said. "You turned yourself in. I just made sure someone was watching." He reached for me, but I was already moving. Daddy didn't raise no fool. I knew better than to let a desperate man get too close. "The closing's at 2, I said, backing toward the door. "Sign the papers, take the money. Maybe it'll help with your legal fees." "You can't do this," he whispered. "You're my wife." "I was your wife. Now I'm just another investment gone bad." I made it to the elevator before the shaking started. Jesse was waiting in the garage, engine running. "You okay?" he asked as I climbed in. "Heard yellin'." Just drive. My phone exploded with texts from Alex as we hit the highway. Threats, pleading, promises to change. I turned it off. Your daddy's gonna be proud, Jesse said after a while. Standing up for yourself like that. I watched Manhattan shrink in the side mirror, thinking of the SEC documents Christine would deliver tomorrow, the closing papers Alex would sign today, and the empty safe that would tell him exactly how long I'd been planning this. I'm proud of myself, I said quietly. That's enough. Jesse smiled, pointing the truck south toward home. Sometimes the longest journey starts with one goodbye. I finished, completing one of Mama's favorite sayings. And as the city faded behind us, I felt lighter than I had in years. Alex wanted to play big city games. Fine. But he'd learn what every Texan knows. Sometimes the biggest losses come from underestimating a small-town girl. The news broke while Jesse and I were somewhere in Virginia. Christine's call interrupted Patsy Cline on the radio. It's all over the financial networks, she said. Alex signed the closing papers, then the SEC moved in. They're calling it one of the biggest fraud cases this year. I watched mountains roll by outside the truck window. Did he suspect anything? Not until it was too late. The look on his face when they served him the papers. She paused. He's asking about you, demanding to know where you've gone. Let him demand. I twisted my wedding ring off, dropping it into my purse. How much did they find? Millions. And those documents you gave me? They're calling them the smoking gun. Jesse glanced over as I ended the call. You okay, sugar? Just tired. I leaned back against the seat. Ready to be home. My phone lit up with a text from Alex. You planned this. All of it. The sale, the SEC, everything. You ruined me. I typed back one message. You ruined yourself. I just made sure you couldn't ruin anyone else. Then I blocked his number. Laura called next. You're all over the local news back home. Texas lawyer helps expose Wall Street fraud. Daddy's strutting around town like a rooster in a henhouse. Is he... I swallowed hard. Is he disappointed in me? Girl, are you crazy? He's telling everyone how his daughter took down a criminal without firing a single shot. Says it's smarter than his way would have been. Jesse pulled into a roadside diner somewhere in Tennessee. Over coffee and pie that reminded me of Mama's, I checked my email. The closing proceeds had landed in my new account, my fair share, plus what Alex had stolen from our savings. Your mama would have done the same thing, Jesse said, watching me stare at the numbers. Remember when old Joe tried to cheat her on that horse deal? I smiled, remembering. She sold the horse to his competitor for half price just to spite him. Taught him a lesson about crossing Texas women. My phone buzzed. Christine again. Alex's lawyer called. He's offering a deal. Says he'll split everything 50-50 if you'll speak up for him at sentencing. I showed Jesse the message. He snorted. That boy still thinks he's holding cards. He never did understand Texas poker. I agreed, declining the offer with 2 words. Not interested. We drove through the night, watching the landscape change from mountains to plains. Every mile brought me closer to home, further from the glossy Manhattan life I'd thought I wanted. Laura met us at the state line, leading us home in her beat-up Jeep. As we pulled onto the familiar dirt road, I saw Daddy on the porch, looking exactly like the rock he'd always been. There's my girl, he said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of leather and tobacco. Heard you've been teaching city boys about justice. Learned from the best. I buried my face in his shirt, finally letting tears fall. None of that now, he said gruffly, but his eyes were wet too. Your mama would say tears are just rain for growing stronger. Inside, Laura had prepared a feast, all my favorites from childhood. As we sat around the kitchen table, my phone lit up one last time. A news alert about Alex's arrest. Federal agents took him into custody. I read aloud, then stopped. You don't have to follow it, Laura said softly. Yes, I do. I straightened my shoulders. Need to know it's really over. Daddy reached across the table, taking my hand. It's been over since the moment you decided to stand up for yourself. Everything else is just paperwork. That night, I sat on the porch swing, listening to crickets and watching stars you could never see in Manhattan. Jesse joined me, offering a glass of Daddy's bourbon. "Remember when we were kids?" he said. "And you wanted to be a superhero?" I sipped the bourbon, letting it warm my chest. "Yeah? Way I see it, you kind of became one. Took down the bad guy, saved a bunch of folks from getting robbed, all without throwing a single punch." "Some superhero," I laughed, hiding behind legal papers and real estate deals. Sometimes the biggest fights are won with the smallest weapons. He clinked his glass against mine. "Your mama used to say that." My phone buzzed one final time. Christine sending a photo of Alex being let out of his office in handcuffs. I deleted it without responding. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said, watching a shooting star streak across the Texas sky. I thought I'd feel guilty or sad or something, but all I feel is free, Jesse finished. "Yeah." I smiled, feeling the weight of Manhattan finally fall away. Free. Inside, I could hear Laura and Daddy talking in the kitchen, their voices mixing with memories of Mama's lessons about strength and justice. Alex had thought he was marrying a simple country girl he could mold into his perfect Manhattan wife. Instead, he'd married a Texas tornado in disguise. And like Daddy always said, you don't realize a storm's true power until you're standing in the aftermath. The morning sun painted the ranch kitchen gold as I sipped coffee with Laura, watching Daddy work with the horses through the window. My phone buzzed, Christine calling with the news I'd been waiting for. "The judge just handed down the sentence," she said. 15 years, no chance of early release." Laura squeezed my hand as I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "There's more," Christine continued. "He tried to claim you were involved, but those documents you saved? They proved you were actually the one who stopped him from stealing from other accounts. The judge called you a silent guardian of financial integrity." I couldn't help but laugh. Daddy will love that. His daughter, the guardian. "How are you feeling?" I watched Jesse ride up to the house, his smile visible even from a distance. "I feel right, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." After hanging up, I joined Jesse on the porch. He handed me a stack of mail, mostly letters from Alex's victims, thanking me for coming forward. "Still getting fan mail?" he teased. "These aren't fans," I said, shuffling through the envelopes. "These are people who trusted someone they shouldn't have. Just like I did. Difference is, you did something about it." Laura burst through the screen door, waving her tablet. "You're trending again. Someone made a TikTok about your story. They're calling you the Wall Street whistleblower." "Lord help me," I groaned, but I was smiling. Daddy joined us, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Got a call from the FBI this morning. They want you to consult on similar cases. Said something about needing your unique perspective." "I don't know." I started, but Laura cut me off. "Girl, stop. You've got a gift for seeing through people's lies. Use it." "Your mama would have said the same thing," Daddy added quietly. Jesse leaned against the porch railing. "Speaking of gifts, when are you gonna let me take you to dinner? Properly this time, not just diner coffee and pie." Laura squealed while Daddy suddenly became very interested in his boots. "Subtle as a bull in a china shop," I said, but my cheeks felt warm. "Nothing subtle about knowing what you want," Jesse replied. "Something I learned from watching you handle Alex." My phone buzzed again, a message from Alex's lawyer. "Client requesting one final meeting. Says he needs closure." "Delete it," Laura advised, reading over my shoulder. Instead, I typed, "He had his chance at closure. Now he has 15 years to think about his choices. Goodbye." Jesse whistled low. "Remind me never to cross you." "Speaking of choices," Daddy interrupted. "Pastor Bob asked if you'd speak at the church social, about standing up to corruption and such." I thought about all the small-town girls dreaming of big city lives, just like I had, about how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's world. "I'll do it," I said. "But I'm not talking about corruption. I'm talking about remembering who you are, no matter where you end up." Laura hugged me fiercely. That's my sister, always teaching lessons. The afternoon sun turned the pastures golden as we sat on the porch, sharing stories and planning futures. Christine texted updates about Alex's former firm unraveling, but they felt distant now, like news from another world. "Got something for you," Jesse said suddenly, pulling a small box from his pocket. My heart jumped until he opened it, revealing a delicate silver pendant. "It's a compass," he explained, "because you always find your true north, even when the storm's raging." I touched it gently, remembering Mama's words about jewelry, how the best pieces tell stories of their own. "Help me put it on?" As Jesse fastened the clasp, Laura pretended to gag while Daddy mysteriously needed to check on something in the barn. "You know," Jesse said softly, "some might say karma did all the work with Alex." I shook my head, touching the compass. "Karma needs witnesses willing to speak up. Otherwise, it's just bad luck happening to bad people. And are you done being karma's witness?" I looked out over the ranch at the life I'd run from and the truth I'd run back to. At Jesse's patient smile and Laura's knowing grin. At Daddy pretending not to watch from the barn. "I'm done being anyone's anything," I said finally. "Except maybe..." "Maybe what?" "Maybe yours, if you're asking." His kiss tasted like sunshine and possibility, while Laura's whoop of joy echoed across the pasture. Later, watching the sunset paint Texas skies in colors no Manhattan artist could capture, I thought about choices and consequences, about karma and justice, about the strength it takes to walk away, and the courage it takes to come home. Alex had taught me that some people see love as a weapon. Jesse was teaching me it could be a compass instead, always pointing toward truth. And truth, as any Texas girl knows, is like a stubborn horse. It might buck you off a few times, but it'll always take you where you need to go.
The ivory silk pooled at my feet like spilled milk, its delicate beading scattered across the floor like broken dreams. My wedding dress, the one I'd spent months saving for, lay ruined before me, covered in what looked like red wine stains and God knows what else. My hands trembled as I lifted it from the storage box, the fabric heavy with the weight of betrayal. I'm Delaney, and this was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. In 3 weeks, I was going to marry Jordan, the most supportive man I'd ever met. But standing there in my childhood bedroom, staring at my destroyed dress, I felt the familiar ache of being the responsible daughter, the one who always got pushed aside. "Oh my God, what happened?" Serenity gasped from the doorway. My best friend rushed to my side, her eyes wide with horror. "Emma," I whispered, my voice cracking. "This has Emma written all over it." Right on cue, my younger sister's laughter echoed up the stairs. She was home from college for the weekend, probably sharing stories with Mom about her latest adventures. The golden child, as always. "Emma," I shouted, my voice carrying through the house. The laughter stopped. Footsteps thundered up the stairs, and Emma appeared in the doorway, Mom right behind her. My sister's face went pale when she saw what I was holding. "I can explain," Emma started, holding up her hands. Explain. I thrust the dress toward her. "How do you explain this?" Mom stepped between us, her face already set in that placating expression I knew too well. "Delaney, honey, let's not overreact." "Overreact?" I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. "My wedding dress is ruined, Mom. The dress I spent $6,000 on." Emma's voice came out small. "I just wanted to try it on. There was this party, and I thought..." "You thought what? That you could just take my wedding dress to a college party?" The pieces clicked together, the wine stains, the torn beading, the smell of cigarette smoke clinging to the fabric. "I'll pay for it," Emma said quickly. "I promise, Del. I'll get you a new one." "With what money?" I shot back. "Your student loans? Or were you planning to get Mom to pay for it like everything else?" "That's enough," Mom cut in, her tone sharp. "Emma made a mistake, but we can fix this. I'll help pay for a new dress." I shook my head, tears burning in my eyes. "That's not the point, Mom. It's never been the point." Serenity placed a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. She'd witnessed this dynamic for years. Emma messing up, Mom swooping in to fix it, and me, always me, expected to understand, to forgive, to be the bigger person. Ever since Dad died, I continued, my voice shaking, it's been like this. Emma gets whatever she wants, does whatever she wants, and I'm just supposed to smile and take it. That's not fair, Mom protested. Your sister's been through a lot. And I haven't, I interrupted. I was 16 when Dad died too, Mom. 16, but instead of getting comfort, I got responsibility. Take care of your sister, Delaney. Be understanding, Delaney. Don't make waves, Delaney. Emma's face crumpled. I didn't mean to ruin it, I swear. I just wanted to feel special for one night. Special? I laughed again, the sound hollow. You've been special your entire life, Emma. When's the last time anyone in this family made me feel special? The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face had gone pale, and Emma looked like she might cry. Good. Let them feel uncomfortable for once. I have to call Jordan, I said, gathering up the ruined dress. And then, I need to figure out how I'm going to find another dress in 3 weeks. Delaney, Mom started, reaching for me. I stepped back. Don't. Serenity followed me out of the room, leaving Mom and Emma standing there. As we descended the stairs, I heard Emma's muffled sobs and Mom's soft murmurs of comfort. Of course, even now, Emma was the one being consoled. In the kitchen, I collapsed onto a chair, the dress a sad heap in my lap. Serenity started making coffee without asking. She knew me too well. You know what the worst part is, I said, fingering a loose beading. I'm not even surprised. Deep down, I knew something like this would happen. Something always does when it comes to Emma. Serenity set a steaming mug in front of me. Maybe it's time to stop letting them get away with it. I looked up at her, surprised by the steel in her voice. I'm serious, Del. You're getting married, starting your own family. Maybe it's time to show them exactly what it feels like when karma comes calling. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, considering her words. For the first time since finding the dress, I felt something other than despair, something that felt dangerously like purpose. Maybe you're right, I said softly. Maybe it's finally time. Your sister's graduation is next weekend, Mum announced over breakfast, sliding a glossy invitation across the table. I expect you'll be there. I stared at the gold-embossed card, my coffee turning bitter in my mouth. 1 week had passed since the wedding dress incident, and I'd spent every night scrolling through bridal boutiques, trying to find a replacement I could afford. I'm busy, I said, pushing the invitation back. Wedding stuff. Mom's lips tightened. Delaney, this is important. Emma's graduating summa cum laude. Of course she is. I stabbed at my eggs. And I'm sure you'll throw her an amazing party with the money you saved by not helping with my dress. That's not fair, Mom protested. I offered to help pay. After Emma ruined it, I slammed my fork down. You know what? I actually have an idea for her graduation gift. Maybe I'll wear my ruined wedding dress to her ceremony. You know, since she liked it so much. Mom's face went pale. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? I stood up, gathering my things. It's what she wanted, right? To feel special? Del? Jordan's voice came from the doorway. My fiancé stood there, looking concerned. I hadn't heard him come in. Perfect timing, I said, grabbing my bag. Let's go. Outside, Jordan caught my arm. Hey, what was that about? Nothing. I yanked open his car door. Just my mother being herself. He slid into the driver's seat, studying me. You're really thinking about wearing the ruined dress to Emma's graduation? Maybe. I crossed my arms. Would it be so wrong? Let everyone see what she did. Del, Jordan sighed. I know you're hurt, but... My phone buzzed. Emma's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. She's called 6 times since yesterday, Jordan noted, and I'll ignore 600 more. I stared out the window. You didn't see Mum's face when it happened, Jordan. She was more worried about Emma feeling bad than about what Emma actually did. Another buzz. This time a text from Emma. Please talk to me. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make it right. I typed back, Anything? How about giving back all the attention Mom gave you instead of me after Dad died? The response was immediate. That's not fair. I never asked for that. But you never stopped it either, I sent back, then turned my phone off. Jordan pulled into the bridal boutique's parking lot. You sure about this? About finding a new dress? Don't have much choice. No, about letting this anger consume you. He turned to face me. I've never seen you like this, Del. I met his eyes. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I've been too nice for too long. Inside the boutique, Serenity was waiting. She hugged me tight. Found some options already. Wait till you see them. As I tried on dresses, my mind kept wandering to Emma's graduation. The image of me showing up in the stained dress, making a scene. It was tempting. So tempting. What about this one? Serenity held up a sleek, modern gown. It's beautiful, I admitted. But it's not. Not the one you spent months saving for, she finished. My phone buzzed again. Jordan had turned it back on. This time it was Mom. Emma's crying in her room. Is this really how you want things to be? I showed Serenity the message. See? Emma cries and I'm the bad guy. Again. So do something about it, Serenity said, her voice low. But do it smart. The graduation stunt? That's not you. You want revenge? Make it count. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The wedding, your speech. Tell everyone exactly what it's been like. Let them all see the truth. I sat down heavily in my wedding dress, the new one we'd just found. It was beautiful, but it felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. I can't do that, I whispered. It would destroy Mom. Like she destroyed your childhood, Serenity countered. Like Emma destroyed your dress. My phone buzzed again. Emma had sent a photo, her and me at Dad's funeral, holding hands. The message read, "Remember when we were actually sisters?" I felt tears prick my eyes. I don't know what to do anymore. Serenity sat beside me. Yes, you do. You're just scared to do it. She was right. The thought had been there since the dress incident, growing stronger with each dismissed feeling, each ignored call, each manipulative text from Mum. I picked up my phone and typed, "Emma, you want to make things right? Then it's time for some truth. Meet me tomorrow, alone." The response came quickly. Where? Dad's grave, noon. No Mom. I looked up at Serenity, my heart pounding. Either this fixes everything, or it breaks it all apart, she finished. But at least it'll be honest. I nodded, standing up in my new dress. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. But maybe that was the point. Maybe it was time to become someone new. Someone who wouldn't stay quiet anymore. Dad's headstone cast a long shadow in the midday sun. I arrived early, my hands shaking as I placed fresh flowers beside his name. The cemetery was quiet, except for distant traffic and birds calling overhead. I thought I'd find you here already. Emma's voice made me jump. She looked smaller somehow, wearing Dad's old college sweatshirt, the one she'd claimed after he died. You're wearing his shirt, I said flatly. So are you. She gestured to the faded baseball cap I was wearing, Dad's favorite Red Sox cap. We stood in awkward silence until Emma spoke again. Mom doesn't know I'm here. Good. I sat down on the grass, patting the spot next to me. Remember when we used to come here together? Before you got too busy with your new friends? Emma sank down beside me. That's not fair. Life's not fair. I plucked at the grass. Like when Dad died and Mom decided you needed her more than I did. I never asked. I know you didn't ask for it, I cut her off. But you took it, all of it. The attention, the money, the endless second chances. Emma's voice cracked. I was falling apart, Del. You seemed so strong. I had to be. The words exploded out of me. Someone had to keep it together. Someone had to make sure the bills got paid while Mom was focused on your therapy, your college applications, your everything. I didn't know, Emma whispered. Remember my high school graduation? I asked. Mom left early because you had a panic attack about starting college in the fall. Emma's face crumpled. I remember. Or my college acceptance letter. Mum barely looked at it because you'd just broken up with your first boyfriend. Stop, Emma pleaded. Or how about last Christmas, when Mum gave you Dad's watch, the one he promised to me, because you needed something to remember him by? Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. I'll give it back. I'll give it all back. You can't. I turned to face her fully. That's the point, Emma. You can't give back the years Mum spent treating me like an afterthought. You can't give back the moments I needed my mother and she was too busy with you. So what do you want from me? Emma asked, wiping her eyes. I want you to understand what you're really apologizing for. It's not just about the dress. Then tell me, she said. Help me understand. I pulled out my phone and opened my photos. Look at these. I started scrolling through pictures. Emma's high school graduation, with Mom beaming. Emma's college move-in day, with Mom crying proud tears. Emma's art show, with Mom proudly displaying the pieces. Now look for pictures of Mom at my events, I said quietly. Emma scrolled, her face growing more troubled. There aren't many, because she wasn't there. Not really. She was always leaving early or showing up late because of something you needed. Del, Emma's voice was barely audible. I never saw it. I never realized. No, you didn't. And now you've ruined my wedding dress, and Mum's first response was to protect your feelings. Again. Emma reached for my hand. I let her take it, remembering how we used to sit just like this after Dad died. What can I do? She asked. Tell me how to fix this. I squeezed her hand. First, you need to stop letting Mom make excuses for you. Stand up and take responsibility. She nodded. And I took a deep breath. I need you to stand with me at the wedding, not just as my sister, but as someone who finally sees the truth. What do you mean? I'm going to say some things in my speech, things Mom won't like hearing, things that need to be said. Emma was quiet for a long moment. You're going to call her out? At your wedding? Not to hurt her, I explained. To heal. To finally be heard. She'll be devastated. I've been devastated for years, I countered. Maybe it's time she understood how that feels. Emma looked at Dad's headstone, then back at me. He would want us to fix this, to be sisters again. We can't be sisters again until we're honest about what broke us apart. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll stand with you. Whatever you need to say, I'll back you up. I felt something shift between us, like a wall crumbling, or a wound finally starting to heal. The dress, Emma started, is ruined, I finished. But maybe that needed to happen. Maybe we needed everything to fall apart so we could put it back together right. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she used to when we were kids. I'm sorry, Del, for everything. For the first time since finding the ruined dress, I felt the knot in my chest loosen slightly. This wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. I know, I said softly. I know you are. The rehearsal dinner buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. I sat at the head table, watching Emma chat with Jordan's family, while Mom fluttered around her like a nervous butterfly. Some things never change. You okay? Jordan squeezed my hand under the table. Fine, I lied, taking another sip of wine. Just ready for this to be over. Milena, Jordan's mother, leaned in from my other side. Delaney, dear, is everything all right? You seem tense. Before I could answer, Mom clinked her glass. Everyone, I think it's time for some toasts. My stomach clenched. We hadn't planned for toasts tonight. That was supposed to be tomorrow, at the wedding. Emma has prepared something special, Mom announced, beaming. Of course she had. Emma stood, looking uncertain. She caught my eye, and I saw a flash of guilt cross her face. She hadn't mentioned this to me during our cemetery talk. Emma cleared her throat. I want to tell a story about my sister. The room fell quiet. I gripped my wineglass tighter. When we were little, Delaney was always the responsible one, the perfect one. Emma's voice wavered. After Dad died, she became even more perfect. While I was falling apart, she was holding everything together. Mom's smile faltered slightly. I never appreciated that, Emma continued. I never saw how much she gave up for me. And recently, I did something unforgivable. I ruined her wedding dress because I was selfish and thoughtless. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Mom stepped forward, probably to interrupt, but Emma held up her hand. No, Mom, let me finish. Emma's voice grew stronger. Delaney found another dress, a beautiful one. But that's not the point. The point is, I've been taking things from her my whole life, and it's time I gave something back. She reached into her purse and pulled out a familiar leather case. Dad's watch. Del, this belongs to you. Dad promised it to you, and I had no right to accept it when Mum gave it to me. Mum's face went white. Emma, that's not necessary. Yes, it is, Emma insisted. She walked over and placed the watch in front of me. It's time for things to change. The silence in the room was deafening. I stared at the watch, my vision blurring with tears. Well, Milena said brightly, too brightly, shall we move on to dinner? But Emma wasn't finished. And Mom, we need to talk about... That's enough, Emma, Mom cut in sharply. This isn't the time or place. When is the time? I found myself standing, my chair scraping back. When it's convenient for you. When it won't make you look bad. Jordan touched my arm. Del, maybe we should... No. I picked up the watch, its familiar weight grounding me. Emma's right. Things need to change. Mum's face hardened. Delaney, you're making a scene. Am I? I laughed. Funny how that only matters when it's me doing it. When Emma makes scenes, they're just crying for help. Perhaps we should take a break, Milena suggested, standing. Clear the room for a moment? But people were already watching, riveted by the family drama unfolding before them. You know what? I said, clasping Dad's watch around my wrist. You're right, Mom. This isn't the place. We'll save it for tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Mom asked, her voice sharp with worry. My wedding, I reminded her. You remember, the one where I'm wearing my second-choice dress because you couldn't be bothered to hold Emma accountable? That wedding? Delaney, Mom warned. Don't worry, I said, sitting back down. I'm done. For now. The rest of dinner passed in awkward conversation and pointed silences. Emma kept trying to catch my eye, but I focused on my plate. Jordan's family made valiant attempts at small talk, while Mom sat rigid beside me, barely touching her food. Later, as guests were leaving, Milena pulled me aside. I know family pain when I see it, she said quietly. And I know there's more to this story than a ruined dress. I nodded, unable to speak. Whatever you're planning to say tomorrow, she continued, make sure you're saying it for the right reasons. Not for revenge, but for healing. How did you know I was planning something? Milena smiled sadly. Because I see myself in you. The dutiful daughter who finally reached her breaking point. She squeezed my arm. Just remember, once words are said, they can't be unsaid. I watched her walk away, her words echoing in my head. Across the room, Mom was helping Emma with her coat, fussing over her as always. But this time, Emma gently pushed her hands away. I can do it myself, Mom, I heard her say. I'm not a child anymore. Mom's hands fell to her sides, lost without someone to fuss over. For a moment, she looked old and uncertain. I touched Dad's watch, feeling its steady tick against my wrist. Tomorrow would change everything. I just hoped we'd all survive the fallout. You look beautiful, Serenity said, adjusting my veil. The new dress wasn't the one I'd dreamed of, but it fit perfectly, both the dress and the moment. Thanks. I checked my reflection, Dad's watch gleaming at my wrist. Have you seen Emma? She's keeping your mum busy in the other room. Serenity smirked. Very busy. Last I heard, she was having an elaborate crisis about her makeup. A knock at the door made us both turn. Milena entered, carrying a small box. I have something for you, she said, closing the door behind her. But first we need to talk. My stomach tightened. About your mother. Milena sat down, patting the chair beside her. And about what I know, I exchanged glances with Serenity, who nodded and slipped out of the room. What do you mean, What you know, I asked, sitting down carefully in my dress. Your father's life insurance policy, Milena said quietly. I was his financial advisor. My heart stopped. What about it? It was substantial, very substantial. Milena opened the box, revealing documents. And it was meant to be split equally between you and Emma. The room seemed to tilt. But Mom said, she said there was barely enough to cover the funeral. There was enough to pay for both your college educations, with plenty left over. Milena's voice was gentle but firm. Your mother chose to handle it differently. My hand shook as I took the papers. She used it all on Emma. Private therapy, college tuition, that apartment in the city. Milena nodded. Meanwhile, you worked through school, took out loans. Does Emma know? I don't believe so. Milena touched my arm. I've wanted to tell you for years, but professionally, I couldn't. Now that you're getting married, these records legally belong to you. Hot tears splashed onto the papers. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve to know the truth before you make your speech. She squeezed my hand. And because sometimes, the kindest thing we can do is force people to face their mistakes. A soft knock interrupted us. Emma poked her head in. Mum's finally settled. I told her I needed... Dell, are you crying? I quickly wiped my eyes. Happy tears, wedding day and all. Emma didn't look convinced. She came in, closing the door. What are those papers? Milena stood. I'll give you two a moment. After she left, Emma picked up one of the documents. Her face went pale as she read. Is this real? She whispered. I nodded. Apparently Mum's been lying to both of us. Emma sank into a chair. All those times you were working double shifts in college, when you couldn't afford your textbooks. While you had that nice apartment near campus, I finished. I didn't know, Emma said, her voice breaking. I swear, Dell, I didn't know. I believe you. And surprisingly, I did. But Mom knew. She knew every time I called home crying about money. Every time I had to skip a class because I couldn't afford the materials. Emma's makeup was starting to run. What are you going to do? What I planned to do anyway. I stood, smoothing my dress. Tell the truth. In your speech. In my speech. I checked the time. 20 minutes until the ceremony. You still with me? Emma stood, squaring her shoulders. Always. From now on, always. We hugged carefully, mindful of our dresses and makeup. When we pulled apart, Emma was smiling through her tears. You know what's funny, she said. That ruined dress might be the best thing that ever happened to us. A knock at the door announced Serenity's return. It's time, Dell. I took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who'd found her ruined wedding dress weeks ago. She was stronger now, clearer. Ready? Emma asked. Almost. I turned to her. Just stay close during the reception. When I start my speech, I might need you. Front table right beside you, she promised. And Dell, I'm sorry. For everything, but mostly for not seeing what was happening all these years. The wedding march began playing distantly. Serenity handed me my bouquet, and Emma quickly fixed her makeup. Let's go get you married, Serenity said. Then we can deal with everything else. As we lined up outside the chapel doors, I caught sight of Mom in the front row, dabbing her eyes theatrically. She had no idea what was coming. Part of me felt guilty, but then I thought of all those nights I'd cried myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't enough for her. Dad's watch ticked steadily at my wrist, like a countdown to truth. The doors opened, and the music swelled. It was time to walk down the aisle, say my vows, and then finally, say everything else I'd been holding back for years. I took my first step forward, Emma and Serenity behind me, toward Jordan and our future. Toward the moment when everything would change. The reception was in full swing when I approached the microphone. Jordan squeezed my hand one last time before I stood, champagne glass trembling slightly in my grip. The usual clinking of glasses quieted the room. First, I want to thank everyone for being here today, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Marriage is about honesty, trust, and facing hard truths together. So in that spirit, I'd like to tell you all a story. Mom shifted in her seat, her smile becoming fixed. Emma reached over and gripped my free hand. When I was 16, my father died. He left behind 2 daughters and a substantial life insurance policy meant to take care of both of us equally. I paused, watching Mom's face pale. I only learned this morning that while I worked my way through college, that money was being spent elsewhere. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mom started to stand, but Milena's hand on her arm kept her seated. But this isn't just about money, I continued. It's about a pattern, about a mother who decided one daughter needed her more than the other, about years of missed moments and dismissed feelings. Delaney, Mom's voice carried across the room, warning in her tone. No, Mom, you've done enough talking. I held up my wrist, displaying Dad's watch. Remember giving this to Emma? Dad's watch, the one he specifically promised to me. You gave it away because Emma needed something to remember him by. As if I didn't need that too. The room was dead silent now. Even the servers had stopped moving. And then there's the wedding dress incident. I smiled without humor. My sister took my wedding dress to a party without permission and ruined it. And you, Mom, your first concern was making sure Emma didn't feel too bad about it. That's not fair. Mom stood up, her voice shaking. I offered to pay. With what money? I cut in. The money you took from my half of Dad's insurance, the money that was supposed to help me through college. Gasps echoed through the room. Emma stood up beside me, her voice clear and strong. It's true, she announced. I saw the documents today. Mom, how could you? Mom's face crumpled. I was trying to protect you, Emma. You were so fragile after your father died. And I wasn't, I interrupted. Or did you just decide I could handle it because I didn't fall apart as publicly as Emma did? You were always stronger, Mom pleaded. I had to be. My voice cracked. You didn't give me a choice. Every time I needed you, you were too busy with Emma's latest crisis. Every time I accomplished something, it got overshadowed by Emma's needs. Milena stood up then, addressing the room. As Richard's financial advisor, I can confirm everything Delaney is saying. The insurance policy was explicitly meant to be divided equally. Mom sank back into her chair, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was doing what was best. Best for who, Mom? Emma asked. Not for Delaney, and not for me either. You didn't help me by teaching me that my feelings mattered more than everyone else's. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm not saying this to hurt you, Mom. I'm saying it because I'm done pretending everything's okay. I'm done being the responsible one who never complains. I'm done watching you favor one daughter while ignoring the other. Jordan stood up then, moving to my side. And I'm done watching my wife hurt in silence. So what happens now? Mom asked, her voice small. Now? I set down my glass. Now we start over, with truth this time. No more pretending, no more favoritism, no more lies about money or anything else. Emma nodded firmly. And if you can't do that, Mum, then you'll lose both of us. The silence that followed was heavy with years of unspoken pain and betrayal. Then, from the back of the room, someone started clapping. Others joined in, until the whole room was applauding. Mum sat there, mascara running down her face, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to fall back into old patterns. But Emma's hand was still in mine, squeezing tight, reminding me why we were doing this. I'm sorry, Mum whispered, but in the quiet room everyone heard. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough anymore, I said gently. We need change, real change. I turned back to the microphone. Thank you all for witnessing this. It wasn't the wedding speech I originally planned, but it's the one that needed to be said. As I stepped away from the microphone, Jordan wrapped his arms around me. Over his shoulder, I saw Milena nodding approvingly, Serenity wiping away tears, and Emma standing tall beside me. Mom sat alone at her table, finally facing the consequences of years of choices. It wasn't the happy ending she'd probably imagined for my wedding day, but maybe it was the beginning we all needed. The band started playing again, filling the awkward silence. As Jordan led me to the dance floor for our first dance, I felt lighter somehow. The truth was out, the wounds were exposed, and now, finally, they could begin to heal. The morning after the wedding, I found Mom sitting alone in my childhood kitchen, staring at an old photo album. She looked up when I entered, her eyes red and swollen. "I thought you'd be on your honeymoon," she said softly. "We leave tonight." I started making coffee, the familiar routine steadying my hands. "Jordan's helping Emma move some of her things from your house." "She's moving out?" Mum's voice cracked. "Into my old apartment. We thought it would be good for her to stand on her own 2 feet. I set a mug in front of her. For both of us to stand on our own. Mom traced the rim of her mug. "I got calls all morning. Aunt Sarah, Uncle Mike. They all want to know if what you said was true. And what did you tell them?" "The truth, finally." She pulled out a thick envelope. "I went to the bank this morning. It's not everything. I can't get it all at once, but it's a start." I stared at the envelope. "Mom, it's your money, Delaney. It always was." She pushed it toward me. "I can't undo what I did, but I can start making it right." The front door opened, and Emma's voice carried through the house. "Del, you here? Carson's truck is loaded up." She appeared in the doorway, freezing when she saw Mom. Jordan and Carson, Emma's boyfriend, hung back awkwardly. "Should we come back?" Jordan asked. "No," I said firmly. "We all need to talk anyway." Emma sat down across from Mom while the guys brought in more boxes. The kitchen felt crowded with unspoken words. "I found something this morning," Emma said, pulling out a folded paper. "My therapy bills from college. The real ones, not the ones you showed me." Mom's hands began to shake. "Emma, you told me they were $300 per session." Emma's voice was steady. "They were actually $150. Where did the other half go?" "To my account," Mom whispered, "to cover other expenses." "My expenses?" I asked. "The ones you claimed you couldn't help with?" Mom nodded, tears falling. I was so afraid of Emma falling apart again, of losing her like we almost did after your father died. I convinced myself it was okay to use the money that way. "I never asked you to steal from my sister," Emma said sharply. "No, you didn't." Mom wiped her eyes. "I did that all on my own. I told myself I was protecting you, but really, I was protecting myself. From guilt, from fear. From having to treat us equally," I finished. Jordan stepped forward. "I think we should all sit down, really talk this through." We gathered around the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had countless family dinners, where Dad used to help us with homework, where everything had once seemed simple. "I'm selling the house," Mom announced suddenly. "What?" Emma and I said together. "It's too big for just me and—" She took a deep breath. "I need to pay back what I took. Both of you deserve to start your lives without debt." "Mom, you don't have to," Emma started. "Yes, I do." Mom's voice was stronger now. "I've spent years making excuses, playing favorites, hiding the truth. It stops now." Carson, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "Emma's been talking about starting her own art therapy practice. Maybe that money could help with that." Emma's eyes widened. "I couldn't." "Yes, you could," I said. "That's exactly what Dad would have wanted. Both of us using our inheritance to build our futures." "And me?" Mom asked quietly. "What happens with me?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "You get to prove that you meant everything you just said, that you're really ready to change." "Starting with family therapy," Emma added. "All 3 of us." Mom nodded, squeezing my hand. "I'd like that." "And Mom," I pulled out the envelope she'd given me earlier. "Keep this for now. Use it to find a smaller place after you sell the house. We'll figure out the rest together." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these seemed different somehow. Lighter. "I don't deserve such amazing daughters," she whispered. "No," Emma agreed, "but you can earn us back. Day by day." Jordan wrapped an arm around my shoulders, and I leaned into him, watching my mother and sister across the table. We weren't fixed, not by a long shot. But for the first time in years, it felt like we were all facing the same direction. "So," Carson said, breaking the heavy moment, "who's helping me unload this truck?" We all laughed, the tension breaking like a fever. As we moved boxes into Emma's new apartment, I caught glimpses of what could be: Sunday dinners where everyone felt valued, holidays without hidden resentments, a future where my children would never have to wonder if they were enough. Dad's watch ticked steadily on my wrist, marking each moment of this new beginning. Something told me he would have been proud, not of the secrets or the pain, but of the truth that finally set us free. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees as I placed fresh flowers on Dad's grave. This time, I wasn't alone. Emma sat beside me, and Mom stood slightly behind us, holding a small box. "Should we do this here?" Emma asked, glancing at Dad's headstone. "He should be part of it," I said, "even if it's just in spirit." Mom knelt down, opening the box. Inside lay Dad's watch, the one I'd worn at my wedding, the one that had sparked so much change. "The jeweler sized it perfectly," Mom said, lifting it out. "Are you sure about this, Delaney?" I nodded. It's time. We'd spent the past few weeks in family therapy, unpacking years of hurt and resentment. It hadn't been easy. There were sessions where we'd all left in tears, days when it felt like we'd never move forward. But we kept going. Mom handed the watch to Emma, who turned it over in her hands, examining the new inscription on the back. "For my sisters," she read aloud, "time heals all wounds. Del, it's perfect. We'll share it," I explained. 6 months each, a reminder that we're both Dad's daughters, both equally worthy of his legacy. Mom wiped her eyes. "He would have loved that." "He would have loved seeing us finally acting like real sisters," Emma added, fastening the watch on her wrist. "Like we used to be." A car door slammed nearby, and we looked up to see Serenity approaching with a large portfolio. "Sorry I'm late," she called. "Traffic was awful, but I brought the designs." Emma jumped up excitedly. "Let me see." We gathered around as Serenity spread out the architectural plans for Emma's new art therapy studio, the one we were building together with our shared inheritance. "The contractor can start next month," Serenity explained, pointing to different areas. "Treatment rooms here, gallery space there, and this whole wall will be windows overlooking the garden." "It's perfect," Emma breathed. "Del, I still can't believe you're doing this with me." "That's what sisters do," I said. "Besides, my accounting firm needs new clients. You're stuck with me as your business manager whether you like it or not." Mom touched the plans gently. "Your father would be so proud of both of you, working together, supporting each other." "Speaking of support," Emma said, pulling out her phone, "I have something to show you both." She pulled up a photo of her latest art piece, a striking canvas split in two, one side dark and chaotic, the other emerging into light. "It's called Sisters," she explained. "I'm donating it to the Family Therapy Center. They're hanging it in the waiting room." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, Emma." "That's not all," Emma continued. "I'm starting a scholarship program through the studio for siblings who need therapy but can't afford it. In Dad's name." I hugged her tight, both of us crying now. Even Mom stepped forward, tentatively wrapping her arms around us both. "Group hug," Serenity called, joining in. "Sorry, couldn't resist." We laughed through our tears, the sound echoing across the peaceful cemetery. When we pulled apart, Mom looked different somehow, lighter, more real. "I have something for you too," she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out 2 sets of keys. "To my new condo, one for each of you. I want you to feel welcome there, always." "Thanks, Mom," Emma said softly. "And there's more," Mom continued. "I've started volunteering at the Grief Counseling Center, where we did family therapy, helping other families navigate loss and change. It's helping me understand everything better." I took my key, running my finger over its smooth surface. "New beginnings all around, huh?" "Speaking of which," Emma grinned, "when are you and Jordan making me an aunt?" "Emma!" I swatted her arm, laughing. What? I need to know how long I have to finish the nursery mural I'm planning. We all laughed again, and this time it felt natural, unforced, like family should feel. We should go, Serenity said, checking the time. The contractor's meeting us at the studio site in 20 minutes. As we gathered our things, I touched Dad's headstone one last time. The watch gleamed on Emma's wrist, catching the sunlight. Bye, Dad, I whispered. We're okay now, promise. Walking back to our cars, I felt something settle in my chest, not the heavy weight of resentment I'd carried for so long, but something lighter, something like peace. Ready? Emma called, jangling her keys. Ready, I answered, meaning so much more than just leaving the cemetery. Mom locked the box that had held the watch, tucking it into her purse. My daughters, she said softly, proudly, and for the first time in years, she meant both of us equally. We drove away separately, but headed to the same place, finally moving forward together. The past hadn't changed, but we had. And sometimes that's enough.